interesting. This is supposed to be for my right. Wow. But that don't last that long. You want some ice? Just something to keep my mouth wet while I'm eating, while you're looking to help yourself. So I assume it's the same guy.
Well, Zach, I sent you a note. But you were there. This section was the resolution. It's not the document. Technology that one. Yep. I'll make sure I just put it. I was there. The emails came in pretty fast. That was an evolving process. And it gave me multiple directions. What would you consider? Want that? I don't know.
We'll call the meeting to order for Monday, April 6th for the Willmar City Council. Roll call.
Mayor Calvin,
Here.
Councilmember Fagerly,
Here.
Meskey,
Here.
Schwantes,
Here.
Davis,
Here.
Alvarado,
Here.
Osmus,
Here.
Plowman,
Here.
and Nelson.
Here.
Present 9, absent 0.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any proposed additions or deletions to the agenda? I would like to move item 16 to item 17 and item 17 to number 16 with the council's approval. I'd entertain a motion to approve as.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the agenda as amended. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. That motion does carry. Next, we have the consent items. Ms. Summers.
On tonight's council agenda, we have for the City Council's approval, City Council minutes of April 15th, City Council special meeting minutes of April 29th, Willmar Municipal Utilities Board minutes of April 22nd, Planning Commission minutes of April 17th, a resolution declaring surplus equipment and authorizing sale at public auction, the accounts payable report from April 11th through May 1st, and for the council's acceptance, we have the Willmar Lakes Area CVB Board minutes of March 19th, Human Rights Commission minutes of March 19th, Willmar Parks and Recreation Board minutes of April 17th, building report for the month of April, and then for the council's information is the City Hall Task Force meeting summary of April 9th, the Invest in Willmar Board meeting summary of April 10th, an application for a temporary position on the Airport Commission by Dan Rigstad, and last, the year-to-date indoor range report for 2019.
Just a couple comments. On the application for the position on the Airport Commission, that is being requested to fill that by Dan Rigstad. Dan Rigstad was on the Airport Commission. He timed out, but they do have a member that is on the Airport Commission now that is being deployed for military duty. And so Mr. Rigstad has agreed to fill that time frame when the individual is deployed. So that is the reason for the temporary appointment. So with that, I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent items as submitted.
So moved. Second.
Motion been made and seconded to approve the consent items as presented. Discussion. Roll call.
Councilmember Fagerly,
Aye.
Meskey,
Aye.
Schwantes,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Alvarado,
Aye.
Osmus,
Aye.
Plowman,
Aye.
and Nelson.
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes. Next, we have the Healthy Together Willmar presentation by Ms. Wendy Foley and Ms. Arfon Mohammed. And I know you guys have been doing a lot of great work in our community, and we are excited to hear the report that you have to give us this evening on the investment that Blue Cross Blue Shield and Healthy Together Willmar have done together. So if you'd like to come to the podium, we'd love to hear your report.
Is the presentation ordered on? It should be down at the bottom. No?
All right, here we go. Good evening, and thank you for having us here this evening. We really appreciate this opportunity to share our Healthy Together Willmar initiative. So I'm Wendy Foley. I'm a Senior Health Improvement Project Manager with Blue Cross and Blue Shield, and my office is right here at Candy-Ojai County Public Health. And I have the honor of managing this awesome initiative that we have going on, working on community health and health equity for the community of Willmar.
Your notes are pulling up, so you might want to change the font unless you want everybody to see your notes as you're presenting them. I'm not sure how it was loaded into the document. There you go.
There we go. Thank you. All right.
Good evening, and thank you for the invitation to share this great work with you. I'm Arfon Mohammed, a community leader, very soon to be nurse next week, and a Healthy with my graduation next week, and a Healthy Together Willmar community table, which I'll explain later in this presentation.
Okay, Blue Cross is committed to improving health and advancing health equity throughout all communities in Minnesota. And in 2016, there was some discussions and things that were happening within the Willmar community and within Blue Cross Blue Shield, and even actually before that time. And there was an agreement to partner together to see what we could do to help create a healthier Willmar. So there were many significant intentional conversations, engaging conversations over many months. And from these conversations, it was really clear what Willmar wanted, what the community wanted. But before I dive into that, we want to give you a little context about why Blue Cross decided to invest in Willmar. So why Willmar? Why not Winona? Why not Mankato? Why Willmar? Why did that come up? So I just want to be real brief here, but I just want to point out there are a lot of great people and great key relationships that Blue Cross had already in Willmar, and we saw opportunity to deepen and to foster those relationships. We also are very curious about the demographics of Willmar. As we all know, we have a population growth that's changing. We are increasingly diverse. We are increasingly aging, and people of color, Latino, Somali, account for about 30% of our population. Children of color make up most of our childhood population. We also have a larger than average state average of retirement folks aged in our community, and a growing Korean community. There's also curiosity of we have a great infrastructure to build on. Willmar had a readiness about it that other communities didn't, and so we wanted to partner with a community who appeared to be ready to engage in this work. And finally, there are many barriers to health that a lot of folks in Willmar are experiencing. We have folks not receiving culturally appropriate care. We have folks that are experiencing isolation. There was a lack of community connections, and people just didn't have access to the things that they needed to be healthy. So once the decision was made to partner with Willmar with the community engagement, I embarked on over 80 different one-to-one conversations. Some of you in the room here were part of those conversations. And ahead of time was emailed out to you the themes of those conversations, so we won't get into details with that. But it became loud and clear what the community was interested in. And basically, Willmar was asking for more diverse voices in leadership, more cross-cultural and intergenerational connections, more responsive health system that works for all community members. And again, there are awesome things happening in Willmar. There are great things happening in Willmar, but what can we do for more support for these great existing efforts? And how can we explore, how can we grow, how can we support and multiply those things, those awesome things that are already happening? And a really strong theme was innovation. People were very curious about doing things differently. So people said things like, let's have some new ideas, let's have some breakthroughs, let's have some curious and challenging conversations. Let's explore, let's be risky, let's be inventive, let's try some new things. And people said, let's make some mistakes. Let's try things and make some mistakes, and let's learn from those and see what we can do to move health forward as a community. So let's just give each other permission and let's just go for it. So one of the first steps that we made in our efforts was increasing diverse voices. And we intentionally came up with what we call the community table. So for this is our advisory board of directors. These are the folks that helped guide our work. And so at this point, I'll turn it over to our phone community table member, and she's in the front there with the blue hijab. So, yeah.
Thank you, Wendy. Being a part of the community table has given me opportunity to grow my leadership, practice new skills, learn and experience what it takes to step into power. I enjoy meeting and connecting with many community members and being more meaningfully engaged in networks and systems to help create change. A healthier and more connected Willmar community is our goal. One of the key parts of the community table's work is directing funding into the community through the Idea Fund, a funding opportunity that supports ideas that help build a community where everyone has the same opportunity for health across cultures, races, generation, and ethnic groups. We've seen 14 projects be implemented in the community throughout 2018, and in 2019, we have 20 more Idea Fund groups working to advance community health and health equity in our 56201 zip code. These projects have included supporting English and Somali conversation classes, hosting get-togethers where seniors of different cultures can discuss health and well-being, supporting community daycare providers in creating and sustaining healthy environments for our littlest community members, supporting and growing multicultural and intergenerational opportunities, building networks, trust and relationship, positive opportunities, and leadership developments for area teams, to name a few. The common theme of Idea Fund projects is that they build connections, focus on shared values and areas with the greatest need, including community in planning, and address policies, systems, and environments that impact health. When we say health, we mean holistically, by including all aspects of health, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, and socially. Health means different things to different people. Meeting people where they're at, connecting with them, and finding out where they want to go on their journey to better health and what is getting in their way. Supporting them along the way is what makes the Healthy Together Women initiative such a great success. One specific example I'd like to mention is the work being done through the intergenerational childcare connections with Caris Health. The Idea Fund effort combined childcare and senior care in the Willmar community, allowing these two groups to interact, develop relationships, and enhance children's social developmental and decrease feelings of isolation and loneliness in the senior population. This effort is one of the many ideas being supported through our Healthy Together Willmar Idea Fund. Our specific funding for this project provided transportation, resources for seniors and youth to help bring them together.
And in the council mailing that was sent to you ahead of time, we have what's called our Idea Fund Key Learnings. So we went through an evaluation process with all of the Idea Fund groups. And within this document, you'll find some of the key learnings, the key takeaways that the groups learned from their risk-taking, from their partnerships. This is very much a values-based project, and so we found that a lot of the values were really a nice, strong foundation to carry forward on. So another area that we'd like to share with you is care coordination. And so we fully support Nagy Abdullahi, and she is a community health worker here, and she works for the Center for Community Health Improvement. So last year she reached more than 300 community members, and she facilitated over 900 care coordination visits. So this is a little bit of everything. This is providing information on prescriptions and medication, at-home consultations, navigating different systems like health systems or health and human service systems. She did a lot to be a cultural broker between her community and our community within Willmar. And Rice Regional Dental Clinic was a place where she really made a big difference. Through her coordination of her efforts with Rice Regional Dental Clinic, the clinic saw a significant increase in the smaller community members attending and being able to engage in their dental health, which we all know is a very important part of all of our health. And the language and the cultural barriers were eliminated, and it really opened up some nice doors for people to be able to have care in a way that was culturally relevant for them. So it's efforts like these that help bridge communities, that create more connections and create much more health outcomes. And so we also this year are going to be working toward adding another community health worker for our Latino community. So that will be coming soon.
Again, these are just a few examples of the great work that's being done in our community through our Healthy Together Willmar initiative. You're always welcome to check us out on the internet at healthytogetherwillmar.org. We are so proud of the work that has been done so far and very excited to continue to support those in our community who are eager to make Willmar a healthier place for all. Thank you.
So at this point, we'll just open it up, and if anybody has any questions or comments or thoughts or anything that you'd like to share at this time.
Council, any comments that anybody has that they'd like to share? Councilmember Schwantes, followed by Neske.
Thank you. I would just like to thank you for the work that you are both doing in our community. It really has been tremendous, and it is making a difference in people's lives. I'm wondering how much longer the project will remain in Willmar.
Yeah, good question. So our commitment with Willmar was a 5-year initiative. So the work started in 2016, and our plan is to have the work then sunset in December of 2020. So we've got about 1.5 years left of the work.
Councilmember Neske.
I was going to ask very much the same question. Just what's next then in the next couple of years? Are we going to see expansion of some things like the community table, or the initiative has obviously more things coming? What to expect?
Right, what to expect next. Do you want me to start? You want to chime in? So what we're anticipating, so we have 14 idea fund groups that were alive and well last year. Some of them are continuing to go even without funding this year. We have 21 groups that were funded this year. Our anticipation from what we see is the groups are continuing to be live and vibrant and integrating in a variety of different places in community. So we anticipate that, I mean, from the beginning, this has always been a community-led project. So we're anticipating that the work will continue, but it will be led by community. So for example, the community table this year, we partnered the first 2 years, and Blue Cross had came to the table and did a lot of the planning. Now this year, the community table leads the planning for 2019. So we're working on making sure that we as an organization too position ourselves so that the community leads the voice. Want to say anything? You said it. And then a couple other projects that we're going to be having that are going to be permanent in the community. We have some pretty awesome bench projects that sit with me is what it's called. And so if you haven't seen them yet, they're going to be coming into community. People right now throughout various locations in the community are making these tiles. They're ceramic tiles. And so we have 8 different benches that are going to be all throughout Willmar, and these tiles are going to be placed on the benches. And so they're going to be cement benches, so they will be here permanently. So you can go around town and find your sit with me tile, and we have a project that's going on with the Minnesota Historical Society to grow arts and culture in the community. So there's a number of initiatives, and part of our hope is we love Willmar, and we want everyone to love Willmar. And so I've had many conversations with many other funding sources that are very curious about the work that we've been doing here. Our anticipation is that as Blue Cross kind of tiptoes back out of this work in December of 2020, we already see that there are other organizations who are curious and would like to continue some of the same kinds of work as well. So, and again, it's community led. So if you were to ask us at the very beginning, so what will this work look like in 5 years? We'd have to say the community will decide. So it's been very community led from day one, which has been, I think, the reason why it's been so fun and so successful, because the community has the voice.
And the community has stepped up for it so far. All the ideas that have been funded are great ideas that are doing a lot of good things that need to be done in Willmar.
Well, I do want to thank you. I take a look at when we first had our first conversation, Wendy, and we talked about, why Willmar? That was a question you had one of your slides, why Willmar? And I remember sitting at the Goodness Coffee Shop in downtown Willmar and talking about why Willmar and how Willmar was right for the opportunity to try something new, to try something different. And I know the original conversation that you had at one of the Vision 2040 meetings was that you were looking to bring about $2 million into our community. And, you bring $2 million to the community and people kind of sit up and take attention. But the thing of it that I found interesting is when we talked earlier this year, not only have you brought that to the table, but you brought additional resources as well. So not only did you find things that need to be worked on, but you were willing to bring dollars along with it. We have a lot of people in this community that complain about everything wrong in town, but you looked at our community and said, hey, there's great things happening in Willmar. It's a bright, shining area. And it brings me back to a month and a half ago when the film crew was here. And I mean, Willmar is going to be portrayed on a national level through Blue Cross Blue Shield about the great things happening in Willmar through this initiative and what the Healthy to Willmar project has done here. I can't help but believe that when Hamline University came to do the study in Willmar, it stemmed off of the fact that you guys had started your work here. So I want to thank both of you. Our phone to you. The leadership skills that you have developed through this project are amazing. They are just unbelievable. And I'll let the council know if it's okay, but our phone will be the keynote speaker at graduation for Ridgewater this year. And so that is a great accomplishment. So thank you for being in our community. Thank you for all the things you do. And I cannot think of a single time, even when you had your health issues, that you ever had a sad face. Every time we saw you, you always had a smile on your face. And my wife is going to be so proud when I tell her that you're going to be giving the commencement comments at our graduation in Ridgewater. So thank you for the work you do. Thank you for being involved in Willmar, and let us know if there's any way we can help. So thank you for your report.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have a hearing on AEHM LCC tax abatement. Dr. Ramstead. Oh, I saw you standing up walking, so I figured you were doing the presentation. I'm sorry. My note said Sarah, but I thought, oh, something changed. Ms. Swedberg.
All right, Mayor, members of the council, tonight I'm introducing a public hearing on a tax abatement. This tax abatement was submitted or was requested by AEHM LLC, also known as Sweet Living Apartments. They own several hundred units throughout town. The property that's currently being presented is a landlocked parcel behind what was known as the Sunwood Apartments, which is in the northeast corner of College View, which is just down the road from Ridgewater College. This property was zoned R4 and approved for a PUD in 1976 for 3 12-unit apartment buildings, 2 of which were built and the third remained green space. So the request is for that current green space. They are proposing a 24-unit building, 23 of which the units would be 3-family apartments, so or 3-bedroom apartments. So this building is really geared towards families and those that are looking for rental property that have children or larger families. The amendment to the PUD was reviewed by Planning Commission and approved. During that time, I will mention that the public expressed concerns of traffic, property value, proper upkeep, such as the fence and garbage, green space, and Mr. Olson assured the committee that all of those needs those needed improvements were being pursued. The two existing 12-unit buildings have seen several upgrades since AEHM has purchased the property. So the request is for tax abatement for 10 years at 90% of the increased tax base. And they state that the project cannot support itself without tax abatement from the city. The current real estate property taxes are approximately $400 a year. This abatement would just be for that particular new construction. It wouldn't be for any of the existing taxes currently on the property. The abatement could range from nothing to $87,000 over 10 years. It is staff recommendation to review the tax abatement request and determine if tax abatement should be approved. If approved, I will note that there is one clause in the resolution that needs to be passed upon approval to decide if tax abatement should be contingent upon the county approving tax abatement or not. Traditionally, that clause has been in our resolutions, but there's nothing that says it has to be. So that would be the other question. I believe Mr. Olson is here to answer questions if there are any.
Okay, this is a public hearing. The public hearing has been opened. The opening comments have been made. Is there anybody from the public that wishes to speak to the issue of Sweet Living tax abatement for the project at Sunwood Apartments?
I put the map up on the screen just for your reference.
Mr. Olson is here, and I did speak with him prior to the meeting, so he had no comments that he wished to make, but he is available for questions if the council so chooses. At this point, I will close the public hearing, bring it to the council table. Council, what are your wishes?
I'll make a motion to approve the abatement.
Second?
With the contingency?
We don't care, or I don't care if the county doesn't want to do it, the city can still do it.
Right.
So, I mean, what about the school district? They usually are in on it too.
The biggest difference, well, one of the major differences between TIF and tax abatement is that TIF is packaged together. So all three of those taxing jurisdictions, when you approve it, they're all three through. With tax abatement, the applicant has to go to all three entities separately. So ultimately, we can approve it and the other two may choose not to. And that by statute is perfectly allowed.
Yeah.
So your motion is to approve the city portion with no contingency.
That's right.
That's the understanding of the
Yes.
seconder. Additional comments, questions from the council? Councilmember Meskey.
Question.
Councilmember Meskey first.
All right.
We had talked in committee. I know this is within the realm of an acceptable abatement. It is not a traditional abatement, however. If this is the first time that we're looking at housing for an abatement versus a TIF district, is this something that you anticipate seeing more of?
Yes, we did talk about this at the committee. Not necessarily. The only other example we have of residential tax abatement is for the trailer park south of Midwest Technology Campus. So we have traditionally used TIF for housing developments. In this particular case, because the PUD was 2/3 completed, TIF has certain restrictions by state statute. So it has to be used for utility work or property, like parking lots or those sort of improvements to the particular property. And so tax abatement has less of those restrictions, which means that this development could fully take advantage of the tax abatement rather than being restricted by those particular expenditures through TIF. And that's why we went the tax abatement route this time.
Councilmember Alvarado.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Have they gone through this process that we have outlined? The City of Willmar tax abatement policy. The purpose of this policy is to establish the City of Willmar's position as it relates to tax abatement. This policy shall be used as a guide in processing and reviewing the application requesting tax abatement. Have you gotten the necessary documentation that satisfies you that they have done this?
Yes. This new tax abatement policy, which is in your packet, was approved by the council, actually right around the time that you approved the Willmar redevelopment tax abatement, which was the trailer park that I mentioned earlier. During that time, I will just point out on the screen here the eligible uses. And so largely what we discussed in the committee was item B in that list to meet the following housing related needs. So to provide a diversity of housing not currently provided by the private market, to provide a variety of housing ownership alternatives and housing choices, to promote affordable housing for low or moderate income individuals, and or to promote neighborhood stabilization and revitalization by the removal of blight and the upgrading of existing housing stock in residential areas. So as long as this need meets one of those criteria, tax abatement is available to be approved. That being said, there's also clauses throughout this policy that state that even if it meets all of the eligible requirements, the council that doesn't automatically mean you have to approve it. Traditionally, tax abatement, because of the nature of having to go through the 3 entities separately, the applicant typically goes through the EDC. In this particular case, the applicant chose not to do that. There has been some contact with the EDC to my knowledge, but again, not a requirement of the policy for the applicant to go through that process. It's just typical, being that they have to approach 3 different entities separately.
Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. You indicated that the Planning Commission had a question about green space, and I'm just curious if you could speak to that a little bit and where the closest park is and what green space is actually on their property.
Sure thing. So it's a little bit difficult to read, but this particular piece on the screen right now shows the layout of that building that is being proposed. So currently it's all green space. So we are minimizing the amount of green space that is on the property for kids to play, playground space, that kind of thing. Because of Planning Commission's desire for that green space to be maximized as much as possible with this development, they went back to their architect and they were able to kind of shrink the footprint of the building. So this little yellowish square to the east of the proposed building is going to be playground space for the kids, and the green space in the background or on the south end of that property would be mostly for stormwater retention. So there will be a decrease in the amount of green space on the site. The nearest playground, if I jump back to the map, is actually kind of within the middle of College View. Unfortunately, because of the fence that is required around this particular property, they would have to travel. There is a sidewalk, but they'd have to travel along 15th Avenue Northwest and then through the streets to get to that particular park. So I would likely see those kids utilizing that playground on site more than going to that park.
Just one more question. There's just one entrance, correct?
Correct.
But it meets the requirements for fire and all of those kinds of things with just the one ingress egress?
Correct.
Councilmember Miskey.
We've traditionally used abatements for job generation and often have clawback mechanisms in there if they don't achieve certain points along the way. I'm assuming with a project like this, because this is new to me, it's a $2.65 million project, is that correct? So I'm assuming it's when it's built according to the plan, then we are done. There will be no more monitoring.
Yeah, when it's built, because of the nature of this, it's built. There will be a development agreement that the resolution passed tonight passed would then kick in a development agreement being created, and that would come before the council again. So if there were any particular stipulations, I don't know, Robert, if there's anything traditionally that you've done in that particular case for residential development in this way, but I think once it's built, it's built and being used.
Mr. Scott, do you have an opinion?
I'm sorry, I was looking at a different matter. Would you mind repeating the question?
So traditionally for tax abatement, with a commercial development, there's certain job requirements that have to be met in order to continue to receive the tax abatement. Is there anything like that with a housing development that would be in the development agreement at all?
Mayor, members of the council, City Planner Schwedberg, I don't believe it would be the same type of requirements as far as maintaining a certain number of jobs or things like that. I guess we could discuss if there's any metrics that should be imposed. I think the requirement would simply be that they build the project as they've proposed to build, and that if they fail to do so, that the abatement would obviously not be available.
Councilmember Alvarado.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I understand that this organization has a different philosophy as far as providing a manager on site. Is that correct?
I believe so. I would defer to Gabe for that if that's okay.
What's the point of the question?
Are we setting a precedence by not having an on-site manager at this property? It seems like the most recent ones that we have do have managers on site to assist the occupants should there be a problem.
Okay. Mr. Olson, do you want to address the concern of Councilmember Alvarado? So you're requesting them to have an on-site manager? Is that what you're requesting?
Well, we have had that at other sites. Why wouldn't we have it on this site?
I'm not sure if it's been a council mandate, so, okay.
Well, I'm not saying it has to be a mandate. I'm just, there are other organizations are voluntarily doing that. The one on County 5, they're going to have one. The new one behind Pizza Ranch, they're going to have one. I think there's a number of properties that have on-site managers. I've heard adverse things about other ways of doing it, but I'm willing to listen.
Mr. Olson.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your time. I appreciate this opportunity. One of the things that in the multifamily world is it's based on the size of the property and the manager on site. So your examples of the County Road 5, there's more units there they're going to be building, which would support a manager. Another thing might be, is it a full-time manager or is it a part-time manager that would live on site? Our staff, we have we have regular routines that they're in, like cleaning of the buildings or maintenance staff going through. So they're on the property already regularly, where a property that size would not be able to support a full-time manager, a full-time salary, and it would be a part-time person at the place. Our staff is already there part-time. So it's kind of the same thing, but it's just a different way of looking at it. Does that make sense?
Sure. Will that person be handling, or will you be handling all those properties, or those 3 properties on the hill there? Or will they be handling multiple properties that you have in town, or how does that work?
So my staff handles all the properties that we have in town, but the people who come through on a regular schedule. Example, we clean common areas of every building twice a week. Right, so the cleaning staff are there for multiple hours one day a week, and then later in the week they're there again for multiple hours. And we do maintenance on them every week, so we're there for multiple hours doing that multiple times a week. So they service other properties, but they're not designated for that specific property. Is that, if that's what you're asking?
Right. That's what I was getting at. There are multiple units
Yes.
throughout the city, I would guess.
Yes.
Okay. Would they go outside the city, or is it just the city proper, or how far out do you guys go?
Primarily, we service the Willmar area. We have some in New London and Spicer that the guys who mow the lawns will go out there and do that, or if there's a tenant concern, they would service those. So primarily, we call it the Willmar area, which is Willmar, some New London, Spicer, maybe Pennock. Primarily, that's where they are.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This area I'm very familiar with because I grew up on South County Road 5 in Voss Park. So I'm familiar with the area, and I'm familiar with the property going back quite a number of years. past owners, there have been certain times of the year where there have been issues. There have been complaints regarding, say, garbage, for example, garbage removal and whatnot. I assume that your point of contact, even if there's not a manager on duty, your point of contact would remain the same in issues that would arise, because obviously that's it's not the end of the world. It's just an issue that might arise. It would be the same point of contact that somebody from the city or somebody else could contact, and an issue like that be expressed and taken care of by your organization?
Yes, yep, same contact, same management company, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Additional comments, questions? Thank you, Mr. Olson and Ms. Swedberg, for your presentation.
Thank you.
So motion has been made and seconded to approve a resolution for the tax abatement on the city side for Sweet Living homes. One of the things that I just wanted to make a comment as the mayor is that one of the things that we've been trying to address is multifamily housing. And this particular unit will have some multifamily or larger family bedrooms. And so that's a need in our community, and it's a need that Mr. Olson and his company are bringing to the table for a possible partial solution to the issue. So it's a nice project. Roll call.
Councilmember Meske,
Aye.
Schwantes,
Aye.
Davis,
No.
Alvarado,
No.
Osmus,
Aye.
Plowman,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Baggerly.
Aye.
We have 6 ayes and 2 nays.
Mr. Scott, that passes on an abatement, correct? We needed 6 votes.
That's correct, Mayor.
That resolution does pass. Next, we have the open forum, and the first we have on the agenda is Mr. Dirk Mueller. Please state whether or not you live within the community or outside of the community.
Hello again. I'm Dirk Milliners. I live outside of the community currently, but my family has owned downtown property in Willmar for 66 years and maintained residences in Willmar for 51 years. I want to address the consideration of City Hall's site options agenda item, which is now 17. The council certainly by now knows the ongoing concern of a council person having a financial interest in one of the properties being considered for the new City Hall site tonight. The fact that a council person has to be excused from the remainder of this meeting when agenda item 17 is considered is reason enough to create suspicion and distrust. Further, using a county website, I was easily able to obtain the county auditor/treasurer property tax statement on the council member involved property within block 25. Last year with a building on it, the property had an estimated market value of $80,600. This year with the building torn down, it has an estimated market value of $26,400. Yet the task force will recommend spending $100,000 for it, $73,600 more than the estimated market value. As a sidebar, the 2 parcels of the Hardware Hank property have an estimated market value this year of $395,000. Yet there has been controversy on the task force that $400,000 to buy that property, just $5,000 over estimated market value, was too much. Block 25, on which the council member involved property is situated, is so much smaller than a regular block. In fact, less than half the size of the Harbor Hank block. With a 10,000 square foot building footprint built on block 25, same block parking will be drastically less than what has been estimated. And the traffic around block 25, both rail and vehicular, should be more carefully considered. At the council's special meeting last week, it was reemphasized that by the city administrator that Quick Trip has every intention of building on its adjacent vacant half-size block, creating even more vehicular traffic on 3 sides of the block 25 that aren't bordered by US 12 highway and numerous active railroad tracks. Purchase of the council member involved property for a new city hall for $100,000 is plainly just not right. Shoehorning the desired size building on the mini block 25 is just not right. Failing to consider all the ramifications of traffic around block 25 and inadequate same block parking on block 25 is just not right. I also want to address Candy Mall's recent sale offer of the Herberger's building with very significant conditions to the city. The task force's agenda report for this evening offers the council an opportunity to select a concept not currently presented. However, any additional sites beyond the 3 the task force is recommending tonight should first go through a task force vetting process. For that reason, it is my opinion that the Candy Mall's offer should not get significant consideration by the full council tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
You bet.
Mr. Stefan Dulesky, please state whether you reside in the city or outside of the city.
Stefan Dulesky, and I do live inside the city of Willmar. Been attending a lot of those meetings too, and I am a downtown building and business owner, and I live downtown, so I have a vested interest. What I'm hearing is you guys need 20,000 square feet for roughly, what, 25 employees? I'd like to see how that space is allocated, whether it's meeting rooms, retail space, or not retail space, but space for meeting people and stuff like that. Another thing is you're renting space to mid-Minnesota. If you need that space, you know, bump them and start utilizing that space. I hear about the roof leaking, and you guys say that building's wore out. You don't wear out a building. You don't take care of it, but that roof can't be much more than $50,000, which is a small price to pay for a new roof. Yeah, I'd like to see how much is collected by mid-Minnesota in the city of, in the county. It's a significant amount of money. Are they paying you guys rent also? And Canada County Economic Development wants to be one of your future renters, should you build a new building. And they're already renting from somebody else that could use the income. New roof, plenty of parking south of Hardware Hank. That little lot is owned by Christians and Associates, according to the county's website, valued at $5,000. You can get a bunch of spaces there. There's a dental office right behind you that's valued at $85,000. So you'd have that whole south half of that block if you didn't buy the Hardware Hank building. You've stated in your minds that you're made up about block 25, two of you. And a legitimate proposal really needs to be started. You guys have got the cart before the horse. We'd like to see why you need it, what's wrong, all the issues, and then come back to everybody and vote for it. Buy the boiler for the city hall and buy the boiler for the auditorium and get it done. The rest of us all got forced into it. We don't have any options. Or use MUC, they're preoccupied with building a new building. You could obviously have another room like this down there and get it built the way you want it. And as stated, your block 25 is right next to the railroad. There's no quiet zones. You got a $50 million project going up on the west side of town, and $1.5 million would have quietened the city down phenomenally. It's looking like a lot of irresponsible spending is about to take place. And then on top of it tonight, I'd like you to take a look at your iPads, go to the City of Willmar site, touch on government, and try and get to the city council information. It's not working. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. John Heron, please advise whether you reside in the city or outside of the city.
Outside the city, part of Vision 2040. And I'm here tonight to invite the council and the community to a presentation that's coming up. We talked a little bit earlier, the comments regarding the great community that we have. I support that concept. I think we do have a great community with a lot of good stuff happening. In this presentation that Vision 2040 is presenting to the community, the Willmar Lakes area. It's called 13 Ways to Kill Your Community, featuring an international speaker, Doug Griffith. He's a consultant by nature. He helps communities grow and helps communities come together. With that said, no one wants to kill their community, so come and learn the ways we can all ensure our communities strive. So with that said again, I'd like to invite the council, the community to attend May 16th. We have 2 venues, 2 times to choose from. Noon to 1:30, Willmar Conference Center. There's no charge for the presentation, but if you want to have lunch, it'll be a $15 charge for lunch. The other, same day, May 16th, so pull the calendars out, put it on your calendar. Be a Little Crows Resort, 6:30 to 8. And again, no charge to attend. There's no meal there, but we would like RSVPs so that we know a count so we can set up accordingly. Again, put it on your calendars. We'd love to fill both venues, and Doug is an energizing speaker. Has high energy. I think you would appreciate it. And also the message that he brings will help us continue to build and continue pulling the community together. So with that said, thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Jerry Gesh, please advise if you live in the community or outside of the community.
Mr. Mayor, council members, Jerry Gesh, I live in Willmar here, a lifelong resident, and I'm happy to say you can't believe how proud I am to be a Willmarite. This is a growing city. I just know that it's hard to imagine what the city is going to look like in the future. But what I want to talk about is the growth. The growth downtown has been good to its limited factor. There's not many empty places downtown anymore. It's successful, but when it comes to growth, it's just limited, I believe. I think when we look to the future in this building we're discussing, this new city hall, we have to look a minimum of 30 to 50 years ahead, you know. And I just don't believe that a city hall in downtown Willmar is going to have the visibility that we want as time goes on. People drive by, I know, but it's not where the growth of this city is happening. I think there should be more, you should listen more some more to the community and not make a decision too fast. There are other options that we could build a city hall in that I think will fit better with the future of Willmar. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Bob Enos. Please state whether you reside in the city or outside of the city.
I do live in the city.
I'm not going to change my mind in the end, but
Y'all remember that comment, don't you? That's the sound of our City Hall Public Task Force telling us that there's no need to hear from any more citizens in public comment because they aren't going to change their minds. There's a new joke running around Willmar. Here's the joke. How can the mayor and the city council create a $1 million city hall? Spend $4 million. Who wants a new city hall? Owners of desperate properties in a downtown with no buyers, real estate agencies looking for commissions, 2 construction companies on Mayor Calvin's speed dial, and an architect taking 5% off the top. Equally shaky, after looking at 6 potential sites for a new city hall, the only privately owned site that's still standing is owned by the mother-in-law of a sitting city council member. Downtown has not seen a major infusion of private capital in at least 40 years. Instead, we see bank foreclosures, contracts for deed with no money down, and banks clearing their books of bad debt. Christensen and Associates is walking away from a large unsold property to build elsewhere. Quick Trip, a company with annual sales of $5 billion, spent $2 billion to build on First Street, spent another $2 billion to build on Highway 12, and then when they got to downtown, they stopped for a second. Now, maybe you guys know something Quick Trip doesn't know. I suspect the $5 billion company has a lot of pros on the ball. There are 4 building inspectors between the county and the city, 4 of them. We have not heard from one of those city building inspectors saying this is a property that's in bad shape, maybe ought to be condemned. We haven't heard from one building inspector who's come here to endorse this project. I was prepared to endorse at least a modest renovation of the city offices. No longer. The public shouldn't trust you guys to build a doghouse. But I do have another proposal. Move your offices to Litchfield Avenue, right between 4th and 5th Streets. Give the mayor, the council members, and the city staff offices that all have a window looking out on Litchfield Avenue. And that way, every single day, you can look at what antipathy and neglect has wrought on downtown Willmar.
Thank you for your comments. Next, we have a Willmar Y Highway 12 intersection design. Mr. Christensen, our Public Works Director and City Engineer.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. In front of you is a very short council action form, and that's because we've got a live presentation instead, which will be much better.
Oh, sure.
So without further ado, Aaron Warford with Bolton & Mink is here to present about 15, 20 minutes on a couple intersection design. And the reason for that is that the council, as well as the county commissioners, have to consent to this design in order to continue the project, as I guess half of you heard from at a Public Works Committee.
Sean, if you could just, for my ignorance, as I have not been briefed on this at all, I have no idea what you're talking about. Could you tell me what it means to say it needs to be consent? What does that mean?
Sure, Mayor, members of the council, it's another term, I think, for agree to, approve. So basically, we have to say, yes, we like this design, and go forward with this design and it's just part of the process with the federal funds and this particular project.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. I appreciate you setting the bar nice and low. I want to say, first of all, thanks to the mayor, thanks to city council, city staff for getting us on the agenda tonight. It's pretty obvious to us that you guys have a jam-packed agenda. I'm going to try to do my best to hit that 15-minute to 20-minute gap that Sean wants me to hit. My name is Aaron Warford. Like he said, I work for Bolton & Menk. We're the lead design engineer on the Hoffman construction team that was awarded the contract to build the Willmar Y roadway. I asked them if they wanted to come up here with me. They said no. So I'm going to introduce them. Todd Hain with Hoffman is the project manager. Will Kanopik, I would say, is probably his right-hand man. I'm sure you guys all know Paul Rasmussen. He's with MnDOT District 8. Apparently, he's been managing this project for a long time. As he lets me know, we're hopefully nearing the end here. Jumping into the agenda, I do want to get you up to speed on that design build process, how we work with Hoffman to come up with some alternative designs, one of which we do need action from the council on to formally approve. That is to put roundabouts at 2 of the intersections of Highway 12, County Road 5, as well as the new realigned First Avenue. It's one of the proposals we made as a project team. Worked with MnDOT, showed those project benefits. MnDOT did conditionally approve that. One of those conditions is the council, as a project partner, the city of Willmar needs to approve that change, as does the county board for Candy-Ojai County. I want to talk a little bit about the feedback we've received, and then again, we'll get to the end, and hopefully there's some questions and some feedback we can get for that council action tonight. During the procurement process, I guess the best way that I can explain this is an engineering firm teams up with a contractor on the front end of a job. It started here in Minnesota about 18 or 19 years ago, where these design build projects were brought on to streamline delivery and really look to propose a lot of benefits. They found that engineering firms working with contractors can look for efficiencies in construction. We can look for ways to modify designs through what's called an alternative technical concept. These ATCs for short get submitted as part of our proposal, gets reviewed by MnDOT and either approved or denied as part of the process. The goal, as always, is what we want to reduce cost. We want to make sure we're being fiscally responsible with how we construct these roadways, but also increase benefit. Are there ways we can do things differently as a project team that maybe MnDOT didn't originally think of in their project development? Of the 8 ATCs that we proposed, we are moving 4 of them into final design and construction, one of which will be potentially the roundabouts at Highway 12 and 5 and First Avenue and Highway 12. All right, looking at the original project layout, this does not include the segment to the south of Highway 40. We did not propose any changes to that segment, but this is the lion's share of the project. I wanted to point out a couple things here. The driver of the project, as I've been made well aware in coordination with the railroad throughout our process, is to build that bypass, that north-south bypass west of the city of Willmar. Makes an important connection for them. The Morris subdivision that you can see on this map runs parallel to Highway 12. The Marshall subdivision heads out of town to the southwest. Building this line adds a bunch to their efficiencies of operations, and as we'll talk about in a bit, really helps the highway functioning as well. To accomplish this, you can see on the bottom of this picture, Highway 12 will get realigned. A new intersection will be constructed with County Road 5 on the east end of the corridor. Highway 12 will also intersect a new extension of First Avenue. The railroad cuts off First Avenue. You can't get to County Road 55 anymore. We have to realign that and connect that to the new Highway 12. A big embankment gets built, a bridge gets constructed over the railroad. Similarly on Highway 40, an embankment will be built and constructed over the railroad. And then to the west, further to the northwest, we will tie back in to the main line alignment of existing Highway 12.
Zooming in a little bit, this is the proposed intersection of Highway 12 and County Road 5. In the original design, there's a traffic signal here. The one thing I'll point out of this view is this is a very big intersection. We have turn lanes, left turn lanes, right turn lanes on all four legs. The footprint of this new intersection is going to be large. It kind of jumped off the page to us early on in the process that we can fit a roundabout here on the same footprint that this intersection sits today and not build a traffic signal. All three teams that proposed on this job proposed this same roundabout for that reason. You could build it, you could actually function better as a roundabout and then save obviously a bunch of cost up front and with maintenance of a traffic signal for the next 20 or 30 years. The First Avenue intersection did not have a traffic signal. This was proposed to be a stop sign controlled intersection. The extension to the south you see there in light blue would go into the future industrial park as that gets constructed. Again, that would be controlled by a stop sign. This intersection is highly unlikely would ever meet what they call traffic signal warrants. Volumes on First Avenue are never going to be high enough to warrant the construction of a signal. We see that as a problem. Through this stretch, Highway 12 is unimpeded. It's driving at about 70 miles an hour through this intersection. Trucks today, when this is built, and in the future, as the industrial park expands, would need to turn out of this intersection and compete with vehicles going down Highway 12 at 70 miles an hour. We didn't like that. MnDOT noted that in their design and tried to accommodate that by building what's called a truck lane that would go up that embankment over the railroad where they wouldn't have to merge with traffic going 70 miles an hour. Again, that was something that we felt like we could solve without building a third lane on Highway 12 in this location. So what we proposed, here's some graphics that we developed and shared with MnDOT so they could distribute on their website. A single lane roundabout at the intersection of Highway 12 and County Road 5 will function with the volumes that we see here today and in the future much better than a traffic signal will. Again, it sits on the same footprint. We can build it for either the same or less cost than that signalized intersection would be built. I want to point out, and we're going to get in a little more detail, these roundabouts are big roundabouts. These are not what people think of when they think of a small diameter urban roundabout. We know with the development that's going to happen after this project, we're going to have a lot of large vehicles. One of the conditions of this approval was that we demonstrated to MnDOT that large vehicles can access all routes through these roundabouts. What you'll also notice here at the First Avenue roundabout is we don't have that truck climbing lane anymore. Vehicles can't come through this intersection, Highway 12, going 70 miles an hour. It's physically not possible. We don't need to build an extra auxiliary lane on Highway 12 to remove that dangerous merging movement. So looking at large vehicle access, I don't know if you can see a lot of detail here. I was going to use a pointer to highlight some things, but I'll try to talk you through it. This is not just for industrial park access. Highway 12 is very similar to Highway 71, where the district constructed that roundabout last year. It is a permit route, meaning that oversized, overweight vehicles can get permits to use Highway 12 to get to all points east and west in this part of the state. So what we had to design here was a very large footprint. What you see in the inner circle of the roundabout, that lane is 24 feet wide. That is one lane. That is not two lanes, even though it is the width of two standard traffic lanes. The entrance lanes coming into the roundabout are, again, 24 feet wide, accommodating those large vehicles. So when we have a 150-foot tractor trailer that is pulling the midsection of a wind tower, like is shown in this drawing, it can navigate the circle of this roundabout and not get stuck. Over the last 5 years, we went and pulled all the permits that people had signed up for to use Highway 12, and this was a pretty prominent one. That's a tough vehicle to design for. But what you can see in this graphic, as that vehicle enters and goes eastbound and westbound, it does make it through safely. A little bit of tracking, you can see a line that kind of goes over the curb there. But I would tell you that's nothing that we can really solve when this thing gets 150 feet long and is pulling a wind tower. Even longer vehicles, we saw this one quite frequently as well. This is 195 feet long. This is a heavy hauler. It's got 19 axles on it. This guy can't drive down the road without a permit. Again, the footprint of this roundabout contains this vehicle very well. The truck apron in the middle obviously needs to be used, and it will be used for a vehicle this size. These aren't frequent users, but we know they do come up and down Highway 12, so we had to design this to accommodate those large vehicles. This little tiny guy here is generally the biggest truck you're going to see on a state highway. This is a 67-foot long tractor trailer, would almost certainly be the largest vehicle that would ever need to get in and out of the existing or future industrial parks. This would be the standard design vehicle for a state highway and county road. I mean, it doesn't even need the truck apron. With the footprint that we have right here, this guy can stay in his own lane and navigate the roundabout very well. So certainly something we had to demonstrate as part of the approval we worked through with MnDOT was showing how these roundabouts would not negatively impact the large vehicle traffic that we know is going to use Highway 12 in the future. So when we talk about the benefits, almost certainly, we touched on it before, there is a significant cost reduction associated with this. Again, the same cost to build the intersection with our roundabout as the original, but we're not spending $250,000 on a traffic signal. We think that's a big deal, especially when we can demonstrate that there are other benefits that we can gain over a traffic signal at this intersection. Reduced maintenance. Again, traffic signals are not just an upfront cost. You have to change out the controllers, change out the boxes. You have to replace a signal every 20 or 30 years. When you do that, it's not just MnDOT that participates in those costs. It's the local agency as well. This solves that problem. We don't have to worry about that anymore with the proposed design that we want to construct. And then again, that unnecessary embankment. As we look west of First Avenue, we don't need a truck climbing lane. We don't need auxiliary lanes. The roundabouts do what we want them to do, and they allow that access in and out of the side streets at a much greater rate. I'd be remiss as an engineer not to bring up the safety benefits. I'm sure most have heard these in the past. I think it's proven, though. It's demonstrated nationwide. I'll throw some statistics out there. The Federal Highway Administration nationwide says roundabouts versus two-way stop-controlled intersections, they reduce severe crashes by 82%. Signalized intersections to roundabouts, again, a reduction of 78% of those fatalities, those injury crashes. Most of the reason that is that speed reduction. You cannot navigate a roundabout at high speed. They're not designed that way. Entering speeds on the range of 15 to 20 miles an hour versus a 70-mile-an-hour highway. I mean, you can see when crashes happen, you're not going to have those injuries. You're not going to have those fatalities. The geometry of roundabouts as well, they don't allow for head-on collisions. They don't allow for those T-bone accidents that you see in the paper where fatalities and injuries are almost always present. Cars aren't positioned that way at these types of intersections. So obviously there's a significant benefit in safety. On the corridor we're talking about, I would argue it's even higher than that. Again, looking at this original layout, as you're coming off of, on the right hand of this graphic, as you're coming off of the existing 12 alignment, if you catch that green light at County Road 5, you are going to be going 70 miles an hour as you come through what is going to be a future industrial park on the west side of Willmar. As you approach that First Avenue intersection, again, this road is going to be designed to accommodate vehicles going 70 miles an hour. I would say that's a much a less safe alternative than one we're proposing. In fact, what we saw at first blush was really that transition zone with this layout as you're coming out of the urban area of Willmar is all the way on the east side of this layout. Before you ever hit Highway 5, people are going to speed up. They're out of town now. They're in the maybe more rural area. Conversely, you throw those two roundabouts in there, I would argue that we've shifted that high speed zone from the alignment at the point where you leave existing 12 all the way about 3/4 of a mile west of First Avenue, where you can really start getting up to what I would call rural high speed, that 70-mile-an-hour design. In between those roundabouts, traffic is going to have to slow down. Certainly as you're coming into town, where someone might be coming in on eastbound 12, they're going to have to slow down for that first roundabout at First Avenue. Again, I see that as a pretty significant safety benefit to the corridor and certainly the future development along this corridor as well. The other things roundabouts do very well is they improve access and mobility. Again, I'll start with MnDOT's existing layout. This has very good access and very good mobility for the state highway. The state highway is designed to be high speed through this stretch. Over time, I would say that's going to degenerate for the local streets. The north-south movements here, I don't think are going to be treated very well once traffic volumes increase with the future development. This is the map that was used in the funding applications for the project, identifying the areas of future development of this industrial park. Some of them were going to be kind of front-end loaded between 2020 and 2030. The full development, area 5 and 6, those were going to follow on later, maybe more towards 2040. But I think it's important to look at this when we're looking at designing this roadway. Don't just look at 2020 when the roadway opens. What's going to happen with future needs and future development? So we analyzed that. And it looks like my header got screwed up in the formatting here. I apologize for that. But what we looked at here was we looked at two different build scenarios. Looked at a 2030 build where maybe only those first 4 areas get constructed just south of New Highway 12. And what we wanted to look at is we wanted to look at the traffic, the data that was driven by our traffic analysis. Now, I'm not a traffic engineer. My traffic engineers tell me I don't generally understand what they do, but what I do understand is letter grades. And so what we output is what's called a level of service grade. A equals good, C equals average, F equals failing, right? F equals bad. In the situation of having stop signs on First Avenue, you can imagine that Highway 12 gets very good letter grades. In fact, the wait times that are shown in the AM and PM are 0 seconds, right? They don't even have to slow down if they're just going east and west. But if you look in 2030, once we start building that industrial park, the wait times on First Avenue get a D grade. They start failing. They go up to about 30 seconds for all movements on First Avenue. In the afternoon period, that afternoon rush hour, we get our first failing grade in 2030, 53 seconds of wait time to find a gap in Highway 12 because Highway 12 again is not impeded. In 2040, with the full build, they all get F grades. And in fact, the software in the PM tells me that a car is waiting on northbound First Avenue for 851 seconds. That's probably not really what it's going to wait, but the software says we don't know what to do here because this guy is never going to find a gap when he's trying to make a left turn out of First Avenue. It's going to be an unsafe condition, and we don't like seeing grades like that when we're talking about level of service. Conversely, you throw a roundabout in there, we get level of service A. 2030, we've built up half that industrial park. In fact, the wait times on 12 actually get longer than the wait times on First Avenue. The reason being roundabouts don't discriminate. They don't say one gets a green light for 60 seconds and one gets a green light for 30. Everyone has to yield to their left. So the benefit becomes that to the local access. Highway 12 actually waits a little bit longer under that scenario. In the 2040 build, when the entire industrial park is built and we load the new traffic into the model, again, First Avenue gets better. More vehicles are coming in and out of the industrial park, forcing Highway 12 to slow down. Whereas in the other example, obviously it's First Avenue that takes the brunt of that weight. So we think that's important. We certainly want to get out in front of people with this. We know that roundabouts can be a big deal in communities. I did come in March to the Public Works and Safety Committee meeting. I met several of your council members, had a good conversation, got some feedback, got some things that we wanted to think about certainly before I came in front of council tonight in response to some concerns. I worked with Paul and MnDOT to have some business meetings starting in early April, met with some of the existing businesses out there, the folks that have a lot of trucking, a lot of shipping in the area, got their feedback on this. We met with emergency services as well. They're certainly going to be involved throughout the project here. We wanted their feedback. I would say by and large, almost all of the feedback we've gotten has been extremely positive. I think the people that are out there today see the benefits of slowing down traffic. They see the benefits of improving safety, pushing that high speed zone further west. If we're going to really drive development in this area, they generally saw as a good idea. That being said, I think we'd understand that not everything is perfect. One of the things we did here at the Public Works Committee meeting was there's some existing problems out there right now with train traffic. Trains right now can stop on the County Road 5 intersection. They can block traffic in the Highway 12 and 5 intersection. And the general question was posed, what's going to happen with your new design if a train were to stop at that intersection? We did shift it about 650 feet south. So we do have a little bit more room now between Highway 5 and Highway 12 than the existing condition. But it was certainly something that we weren't aware of from the outside looking in. We did go back and in conversations with the railroad and with MnDOT, really went back to look at the drivers of this project. That bypass line, that north-south line of the railroad is critical to understanding the future operations here. So currently, there are about 16 trains a day that use this Morris subdivision line to come in and out of the yard, of the rail yard in Willmar. The purpose of this line is to pull about 7 to 10 trains a day off of that line, the ones that want to access that line that runs southwest, that Marshall subdivision line. Currently, the biggest driver of delay at the rail yard are trains that come in and need to switch. If they're coming in going southeast and they need to switch to go southwest, they block up that rail yard. Similarly, trains that are coming in on that Marshall line and need to switch to go back out to the northwest have to do it in the rail yard. With this new design, those trains are removed. The ones that want to get into the rail yard and get through and onward to Minneapolis and all points east won't have that conflict anymore. So what we understand, the driver of that, when trains are stopping at Highway 5, they're waiting for those trains to switch in the yard. If we pull that conflict out, we certainly think that in and of itself is gonna improve that situation immensely. That being said, I do have engineers on staff, and we love looking at models like this. So we developed this model that shows, okay, we've got 2040, everything is built, we've got this industrial park out there. Let's start throwing some delays on there. Let's park a train for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, all the way up to 10 minutes, and see how long it takes traffic to stack all the way back down Highway 5. How long does it take at every hour of the day to get 650 feet of traffic that could potentially block our intersection? I don't want to get into these numbers. I colored everything. Green means go. Green means good. 75% of the time, we don't have a problem with that scenario because we've got that 650-foot offset. 25% of the time, our model says, yeah, you could have that problem. You could have vehicles, if the train sits there for 6 minutes at 4 o'clock, between 4 and 5 o'clock, or 8 minutes between noon and 3, traffic could back up all the way to your roundabout. So we wanted to know that. This doesn't talk about the probability. If we remove those 7 to 10 trains, we think the probability is pretty small that this is going to happen. But we wanted to know what we were dealing with. So there's some data, I guess, that we felt like we should show you that there's a potential of that railroad crossing blocking traffic. But what I would say is that going back to our roundabout design, we've got some inherent benefits with how we're going to build these roundabouts. We need that 24-foot entrance lane. We need a 24-foot circulation lane. The good news is that's going to help us solve this problem. If you can keep the center circle of the roundabout open, in our perspective and MnDOT's perspective, it's actually going to function better because what roundabouts do is they give you escape routes. If you're coming in and you're eastbound on 12 and you want to take a left and go 5 northbound across the tracks, you can turn right and go south if a train is stopped and block traffic. You can go through the intersection and head into downtown and pick a different location to cross. You've got more options. Northbound traffic in this layout, we've got an escape lane for a right turn. We have 2 lanes of approach on northbound 5. If you don't want to wait in that line, take a right. Go into downtown, find a different way to cross. The one movement that we see a potential issue is that westbound movement. So we're going to zoom in on westbound here. Having 24 feet of width here helps us a bunch. So what this shows is a green car or a set of cars that are stopped on the right side of this road. We have enough room for even a tractor trailer to get by that car and get through the roundabout so as we effectively won't block that entrance point. So we're working with MnDOT. We're trying to figure out a way to sign this. This isn't generally something that we have tried to design around before, but if we can creatively sign this, with do not block intersection or stop traffic, use shoulder, we're confident that we're not going to gum up the works here for that 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 minute window where a train could block the intersection 650 feet north. The second thing that we heard, this was in coordination with Sean and county staff. They've got a roundabout project. They've already bid their roundabout project, and they're going to probably beat us to construction. The window that they're looking to build this is June to August of this year. If you look at that little purple rectangle down there, is County Road 5 and County Road 15. It's just south of the Willmar Y project, and they're going to close that intersection. So starting in June to August, they're going to detour all County Road 5 traffic to the east on 23, north on 1st, back west on 15. They're going to connect, I think it's at 22nd there. There's that ball field there. And then take Willmar Avenue back to County Road 5. They were under the impression that County Road 5 was going to be open all summer. So when we came in and talked to the county, we said, well, hold on. That little blue box is where our roundabout is. We're going to close County Road 5 when we start building our intersection. So there was some concern. You can see dashed here in yellow, our proposed detour route was going to go Willmar Avenue to Industrial and back to 12, just to skip that one little segment of Highway 5. What we committed to in talking to Candy, Ojai County is we'll take care of that conflict. If our 30 working day window hits your window, we'll go out, we'll re-sign your route, we'll pay for any of those changes, we'll get your traffic on our route as they come Willmar Avenue and have to cross our route anyway. So working through that, we obviously have to communicate with Mel and his staff as we do get nearer construction on when those might interact. But I think the commitment that we made to the county was don't worry about it. We'll handle it. We'll communicate to all the travelers and then coordinate with our local partners when that needs to happen. So with that, I just wanted to get you up to speed on the design process. So we got about a 92 92-day delay, I believe, in contract award. We were going to be here this winter having this conversation. We didn't get a contract till late winter, early spring. There were some delays with our partners signing agreements that MnDOT had been working on for years. All that being said, we are finalizing preliminary design. We're working right now to expedite design. We got to get out there this summer. We don't want to lose a year of construction. So building the roundabout at Highway 5, building those embankments on Highway 12, it's imperative that we get through this process now to allow Hoffman to get out in the field. That being said, we got to get the city county approval. We got to get our ATC formally approved with MnDOT. And I guess that's why we're here tonight, expediting those final plans. I know every time I talk to Todd, he's asking me when he can get in the field. So that's where we are right now. I hope I stayed within my window. Certainly, I'm here to answer any questions or comments or concerns that you have.
Thank you for your presentation. We do appreciate that, and nice to meet the people that are formally going to be working on the project. So thanks for being here. Council questions? Councilmember Nelson.
Would you just address the trail that's on your map in the pink?
Yes. I'm going to go back and see if I can get a better picture. This is changing, by the way. This is one of the things we're finalizing with MnDOT. So originally scoped, there was a trail crossing at County Road 5. It was only going to be on the east side of the county road where the existing trail is today. I believe we have final word from MnDOT that there will be pedestrian connections on all 4 legs of this intersection and the First Avenue intersection, because as of January of this year, Highway 12 has been designated an important bicycle route. Is that right, Paul? So there's a little bit that's going to be changing here. We are going to maintain that trail. That trail does need to be maintained at all times during construction. It is what we committed to in the proposal. The trail crossing of the roundabout will likely, though, be on all 4 legs, but only really linking the north-south trail in the west, if that makes sense. We have to let bikes get across all the legs, but the trail will only be on the east side of Highway 5, County Road 5. In a roundabout situation, pedestrian crossings are not signalized. So you do lose a little bit of that signal protection. What you gain, though, is you gain a median, an island or a refuge in the median. So you only have to cross one direction of traffic at a time. You don't have to find a gap and cross all the lanes east and westbound. The roundabout lets you do that kind of in stages to find your gap and safely cross. It will be striped. There will be pedestrian crossing signs, but it won't be signaled. You don't signal anything in roundabouts. That's kind of a no-no.
Councilmember Paulin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for the presentation tonight. Appreciate it. Just want to go back to the discussion that we had regarding train traffic. We had discussed at the Public Works meeting and that well, any of the graphics that has a close-up of 12 and 5. Yeah, that works real well. We had discussed the northbound to eastbound dedicated turn lane. And I was really hoping to see a westbound to northbound dedicated turn lane. Why was that not implemented in this design?
A couple of things. We're a little bound by the fact that we only have one lane entering the roundabout. On the northbound leg, you've got 2 lanes all the way down on Highway 5. This is the only segment of this intersection where those 2 lanes actually continue all the way to the intersection. So that allows us to do that. That right lane, or the lane on Highway 5 that takes the turn westbound, is a lane all the way to the project limits. For westbound 12, we don't have that. What we have is a shoulder. So even if you would build that little free right lane, it wouldn't get you much past about 50 feet when you only have one lane anyway, if that makes sense. So that free right needs a second lane, or it doesn't give you the benefit. It basically gives you the same benefit you get here, whereas it gives you the room to get by someone. But if you go 50 feet to the right of that green vehicle, there's no lane there for that car. So you don't gain as much value as you get with that right turn lane, because that right turn lane starts as a through lane all the way down at County Road 5 and Willmar Boulevard, I believe.
Willmar Avenue.
Willmar Avenue.
Okay. Well, and this is my preamble. First of all, I am in favor of this project. I like this design, and I believe that this is probably warranted versus a traffic signal, because I think we're going to be experiencing increased traffic loads, especially with the housing development that's going to be taking place on North County Road 5.
You brought that in too.
But I do believe, and I still do have some concerns, and especially I think your table did a good job of illustrating that. If you run the extrapolations for stop time, we would be kind of just sort of taking BNSF's word there that the train diversion from eastbound to southbound train traffic, at getting rid of that would alleviate a lot of our train stoppage problems. Because without that being true, I mean, there are quite a few events that I've documented personally where the train traffic has been over the tracks in excess of 10 minutes, in which your extrapolations didn't even show beyond that, the length of automobiles, which would definitely, I mean, we were at that amount after about 7 minutes.
Yeah, and some of those peak hours, you sure were after 7 minutes. I think in that daytime period, anything at 10 minutes, other than 11 o'clock at night, is going to get you over that 650. That's kind of why I cut that table off.
Yeah, well, and I have timestamps of 12 minutes and 15 minutes and beyond. And so, like I said, it's still a concern of mine. And like I said, it would be great if what BNSF is saying regarding the train traffic and trains being diverted, instead of through the switch yard, being diverted to the south and then eventually southwest, if that plays out the way that it's supposed to, that solves our problem. But if it doesn't, then what? And my only concern is, okay, I see how vehicles can fit if people do what they are supposed to do. But I also know the volume of traffic coming northbound on County Road 5 and coming westbound going to northbound on County Road 5, because I do it 6 times a day.
Right.
And I've done it for decades. So it's a concern of mine.
I guess the way I would answer your initial question, Councilman, is that when we looked at this, when we looked at adding a similar right lane to that west to north movement, in the opinion of MnDOT and our designers, unless we added a second lane to Highway 12, we didn't get any more benefit. There's a threshold where it stops up just the same as it's going to stop up in this example, because we don't have that second lane of entry. At some point, if the traffic gets so backed up, you can't get around that. One thing I would note, and we did look at here, and this was again that far left column. What that highlights is it highlights the northbound the northbound traffic in 2040. That's again, we're developing this whole area. We've put that in the model. This is how many vehicles are going northbound on Highway 5 at those peak hours. The column on the right documents the percentage of those vehicles that are going westbound and turning right. It does appear to be less than half of those vehicles. The predominant movement is that northbound movement at this intersection at all but 2 hours of the day, midnight and 11 p.m. So in the heart of the day, the biggest surges in traffic are shift changes, people going to school and those things, and those are north-south traffic. So a driver of it, again, isn't that westbound right turn. In some of those peak hours, you're down in the 20%, 40%, 30%. 28% at 6 o'clock. That's because the shift change is what's driving that volume. So again, it's another reason why we thought, the benefit might not be there to wholly overhaul this design and add a free right if it's not gonna really relieve that pressure that we might see.
Okay, third and final, if I may. Okay, then because you're the expert, I'm not the expert here, but I'm just going to ask the question. In the event, say worst case event, that you had a train sitting there for 12 minutes at peak travel time and you had traffic backed all the way up to, let's say, to the roundabout, what does the data show? What does the data shows happens at those events regarding traffic traversing in the circular motion around the roundabout? Does the traffic pattern, does it grind to a halt, or do people tend to continue around the roundabout as opposed to stopping in the roundabout?
What we see behavior-wise, and it's hard to model behavior, but what we see with behavior and roundabouts is people start using those escape routes. They start getting out of the intersection and heading different directions, because the roundabout lets them do that. You know, if I'm coming northbound on 5 and I've driven this intersection and I know, and I look ahead and I see that traffic stopping up there, I'm taking that right turn. I'm getting out of here because I know that I can go downtown. Our concern was more what happens when people don't know where they are. Again, making sure that people aren't blocking the circle. If there's a regional trucker or a traveler that needs to just get to all points west, let's make sure the roundabout is open for that person, because they might not know those escape routes. I think is what we would try to, do things creatively with signing this, so people understand, hey, if you see Highway 5 isn't moving, don't drive in the middle of the circle and block that intersection. Leave it open so people can make those maneuvers to get out of that congestion. Whereas a traffic signal might not even let you do that. Traffic signals aren't going to give you maybe an opportunity to U-turn, where a roundabout inherently just does.
And that's a problem that we currently have. And I'm sorry, I thought of one more. May I ask it quick? Well, yeah. You guys are engineers, so you love this stuff, right? What kind of contingency plans exist, if any, for developing a new method of doing something like this? So say a problem does arise, or an unforeseen problem does arise. Does putting in a new method, because I mean, obviously this is taking out the signal, the controlled intersection, putting in a new type of intersection. Say that type of problem does arise. Is there any kind of pre-planning, or, like I said, contingency plan that can go in the books from the very beginning, saying, if this happens down the road, then we can do this?
Boy, I guess I have not ever built in a contingency plan like that. I know that certainly MnDOT reacts to problems at intersections, and I think that, we'd all be kidding ourselves if we, assumed everything that was designed and built worked exactly like you wanted it to. Roundabouts are what we call convertible. They're rather easily convertible. One of the new approaches to roundabout design kind of stems from some ineffective multi-lane roundabouts. When you add a second lane to a roundabout, things just get really confusing. They've been built all over the state. I know a lot of agencies wish that they wouldn't have. So one of the new approaches to problems like that is, if you see you're at a threshold where you might need a second lane through a roundabout, build one lane, but build it so it's convertible in the future, where you can just move some curb lines and add a second lane 5, 10, whatever years down the road. Roundabouts tend to be convertible that way, whereas if you stick signal poles in the ground to go and get those foundations moved, to add lanes to a signalized intersection is a lot more difficult. I don't work for MnDOT. I can't commit for anything, but I would tell you retrofitting a roundabout for maybe a free right turn lane is certainly a lot easier than reconstructing a signalized intersection. You can do that while the roundabout is open. If something like this were to completely not function, I don't know, Paul, if you've had examples of that in the district, there are ways to modify roundabouts pretty easily to solve some of those problems. And I think that's been kind of the evolution of roundabouts, certainly in Minnesota over the last 18, 19 years, that we're starting to understand that.
Okay. Well, thank you for your patience with my
No,
questions.
those are good. I wish I was a better engineer. I could answer you a little bit better.
No, that was just great. And as I mentioned,
Although we've never made modifications to a roundabout that we built, at least in our district, one of the things that would happen on any project that we build, sometimes the thing like Aaron mentioned, sometimes they don't work exactly as you have planned, but also they don't fail in the same way you thought they were going to too. So, and doing that, what would happen is we came out there, we might not see the problems. We may see problems, but we may not see the problems that we're anticipating right now. So if we begin to have those problems, we'll analyze those at that time and then come up with a solution to do that. And as Aaron mentioned, the roundabouts are a lot more flexible than a signal would be. With a signal, you'll have foundations that are 8 feet into the ground that have to be removed. Where with roundabouts, we can add lanes and do things that are a little bit easier to take care of.
okay. Well, thanks again. At this point, I'm supportive of the concept. Thank you.
Mr. Christensen, our Public Works Director, City Engineer, do you have comments as to the concerns that Councilmember Plowman addressed?
Mayor, members of the council, I think Aaron's addressed all of those very well. I had many of the same concerns after they were brought up at the Public Works. And the concern about 1 to 2 lanes, I was on board with needing to have it 2 lanes. The way Aaron explained it makes complete sense to me. I've been through some of the ones where you're in a single lane highway and then a double lane roundabout and then a single lane highway. And that does generate some confusion. I'm less concerned at this point now that they are 24-foot lanes. That's something to seriously consider. I had no idea the lanes are going to be that wide, which generated some concern. At 24 feet, that is 2 lanes of traffic in width, even without the stripe. So I don't have any concerns at this point.
Thank you. Any follow-ups, Councilmember Plummer?
No, I think that, yeah, the points that our city engineer pointed out is, they're valid points, and I think worth consideration here. Thanks.
Councilmember Fagerly, followed by Osmus.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So in perspective, is this going to be a bigger roundabout than Highway 71 and 7 then?
I don't know all the details about that. I know that they accommodate the same design vehicles, those permit route vehicles. That's been a concern in areas like Highway 12 and Highway 71. We didn't necessarily, take a carbon copy of that, but I know that, I don't know enough about the geometry of the entry widths and the circulating a portion of the roundabout on Highway 71.
Well, and I can answer that. This one would be slightly smaller for the most part, except for the free right on the one corner. And the reason it's able to be slightly smaller is if you see the center circle, the green area is not a circle, it's oblong, and that allows us to get that bigger vehicle through more efficient without making it a little bigger. So that's actually slightly smaller. You'd have to get out and measure it to tell the difference. Just driving through, you'd never notice.
So the red color, is that raised concrete then?
That is concrete. That's a good point. I maybe should have walked through that a bit. And Paul is right to point that out. So on the permit route, those vehicles are permitted to go east-west. They are not permitted to use the county road. They can't make turns at these intersections. They need to continue on Highway 12. That's their permitted route. So we were able to shrink this a bit. This is 146 feet in diameter. If you look at that dimension across that green oval. So by kind of smushing that grass and making that concrete raised, they call it a truck apron that allows that tracking vehicle over it. We were able to get this a little bit smaller. 146 feet diameter, though, is still a very large roundabout. In a typical urban setting, you're probably looking at more like 120 to 130 feet. We had to grow that to get these wider lanes in there. Certainly that circulating lane at 24 feet is not generally how you would see a roundabout, but it's to accommodate your industrial traffic. We need that width. We want to make sure we're not choking anything off here with our design.
I know Highway 71, there's been a couple of trucks that went straight over the
One of the first roundabouts I ever saw was down in Blue Earth on 169, and you'd be amazed how many people ended up on top of that snowbank in the middle of the roundabout that first year.
But they would hit the cement first.
Right. So there's a raised median. It's mountable. You don't want it to be a vertical curb. You want a truck to be able to comfortably kind of ramp up and over it so that it doesn't, upset their load or anything. But it is concrete all the way to that green oval area that is designed to carry that truck load.
Okay. And then do you think our industrial park's going to be full by 2024?
I don't make judgments. I just look at the plan.
Oh, okay. Of course.
We phased it, 2030 and 2040.
Of course. Thank you.
Councilmember Osmus, followed by Meske.
Thank you. I hope everybody else is comfortable and confident with the backup traffic of going north over that railroad track. Didn't we establish that the new roundabout down at 19th Avenue and 5, didn't they put a free right?
They did. They are about 200 and some feet away. I believe they're closer than we are. And they don't have kind of widths that we have here. They didn't have any other way to do any kind of accommodations at that roundabout, from what I understand, talking to the county engineer. So they had to do something, or it was going to stack up in the matter of minutes, and they did not have a way to keep people out of blocking the circle as we think we do here with our with our widths of our lanes.
So you think you have enough space in there farther going east for traffic to stack?
We can never vouch for behavior. We're hoping again to work with MnDOT to get what we feel like is some very clear signing. We're concerned. We don't want to stripe 2 lanes here because of what your city engineer said. You don't want people entering this side by side. It's not what it's designed for. We think there's a way to accomplish that so it is clear. Can we guarantee there's never going to be someone who kind of straddles that lane and doesn't let people by them? Yeah, I think that there's potential behavior issues. But we've got the width to do it. I think with some directives, with people who maybe understand that this problem exists. I think it should be clear that you need to get to the right if you're gonna wait for that train and you're coming westbound on Highway 12.
Okay, because if you were here for part of the first part of our meeting, but there is 4 large apartment complexes going up north of that intersection, and that's going to be a lot of traffic.
That's right. Well, that's a good thing. And I think what we like about that is we like that the functionality of the roundabout in general, train traffic aside, is going to be vastly superior when everything is developed in this area to serve that traffic. I think, roundabouts grow with traffic a lot better than signals do. You don't need to move poles. You don't need to change programming. They function kind of on their own. So hopefully with the benefits that we're hearing from our project partners at the railroad, that those trains are going to be diverted on the new line and having a nice big footprint here, we don't see those problems that are rising right now.
And then the second issue, and Councilmember Fagerly touched on it, but that we talked about at the meeting, was the height of the center of the roundabout. And this says like 13 to 14 feet. So I'm just curious if we know, or what is it? There's a 13. That's.
Yeah, these would typically be around 3 to 5 feet in height. It's generally just enough to block headlights.
Right.
What you're trying to do is you don't want people approaching a roundabout at night and seeing headlights and they just go straight through, right?
Right.
So you try to get enough obstruction there so that doesn't happen. These would be pretty short.
Did we ever determine what the height was of the one at 771?
I don't know that.
Because it is different than the rest as you continue to go east on Highway 7 to the ones that are like closer to St. Bonnie, and those are higher, and exactly what they're supposed to do is block the headlights. The one at 771, there isn't just one truck that's gone over. Going east and west, there's cars that have gone through and over, and whatever that height is, that's not good. And I don't know if maybe once then, I know you talked about shrubbery and things being established on the top of it, that also is going to help block light.
We would typically look to design standards for the height of that inner circle. In this case, it's likely going to be pretty plainly landscaped. It's not going to be anything decorative with certainly any flowering plants that need to be maintained, unless someone would step up and want to do that. Our project would probably put some native grasses in there that would get a little bit of height to them to help again with obstructing that view through the roundabout. But I would anticipate that 4 to 5 foot height of that center circle to be pretty standardized.
Okay, I was just wondering if you would address that with that other.
I don't
that
know
other
enough
height.
about
Okay.
that. I apologize.
Councilmember Metzger.
Thank you for the presentation. I think this is the plan. I sincerely believe that you've covered most of the bases. Just a minor question about that path. Just on the bottom half there where you do have the crossing 2 lanes there and one coming multi-directional, is there going to be a way to stop on that first piece?
That's a good question. It's not generally wide enough there at that little median. When you get out to the location of the crossing, it's actually a striped barrier between the right turn and the exiting lane of the roundabout. Typically, you're looking for a minimum width to have a dedicated refuge for pedestrians, in that 4 to 6 feet range, and we don't really have that there. So that would be a crosswalk, a striped crosswalk through that location, but it would be on the user to get across both lanes at that location to get to the refuge then in that red median between eastbound and westbound.
Right, because I'm just looking, that's when those wider lanes becomes a detriment. Because you're going to
agree that does open other problems up for sure. for sure. What we liked about keeping the northbound 2 lanes was that movement to eastbound 12 made a lot of sense. It's 2 lanes now. Having to drop a lane further south of the roundabout, we worked through that process with MnDOT in our discussions. It made sense to keep those 2 lanes entering, especially when one can just peel off and head into Willmar. That seemed like a logical movement to maintain.
Oh, I absolutely agree with that. I'm just wondering, is there a way that and again, I'm imagining these risen areas in red, if that trail came in a little farther to the south and then you could get on top of that piece and cross it. I don't know. It just seems to me that, I played Frogger as a child on video games, and I'm looking at it potentially.
I agree. There would be a benefit to having a refuge there.
Yeah.
I think that would be a benefit. I would say that I'm not an expert in pedestrian and bike safety, but I would certainly ask that question of those at MnDOT who are. What have they normally done here if you don't have enough width there? And if there's a standard that can be implemented, I don't know that we would object to that, to allow that refuge, because there's value there.
Sure.
That is the one safety benefit for pedestrians and roundabouts. It kind of divides up the crossing for you naturally. You look to one way, you find your gap, you go, you get to your safe spot, you look the other direction. If we could provide that, I don't see a reason why we wouldn't.
Additional comments? Thank you for your work. Thank you for your presentation. Paul, it's always good to see you. You've been working this project for a long time, and I know that I would see you've gotten a few gray hairs over or lost some hair, but I don't think that would be politically correct. So I didn't say that. So, but anyways, thank you for the project. So we have a, did we get a motion on this? Not yet, did we? I'm looking for a motion to approve the intersection design.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the Willmar Y Highway 12 intersection design as presented by Bolton Mink. Additional discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. That motion does carry. Thank you for your work. We appreciate it.
Thanks, folks. Thanks for having me.
Next, we have a Robbins Island Four Seasons Shelter presentation. After this, we'll be taking a 5-minute break.
Mayor, member of the council, tonight we're bringing up updated information of Plan E of the Four Seasons Shelter at Robbins Island. We all know about the history of this shelter and the grant that we received from the DNR. It went through the Park and Rec Board. We've discussed and reviewed several plans. We brought it up to the last council meeting, and we looked at Plan E. Richard's going to bring up more of the details of Plan E about some of the things that we looked over and adjusted and gained some more additional information. Tonight, I'm looking for council approval for Plan E and direct staff to prepare bid documents and reallocate funding for this project once the bids come in.
Mayor and council, at the last meeting, we were requested to develop more information on Approach E. Approach E is similar to the other approaches we had. It maintains the restrooms and the community room. It deletes the program and staff areas. The site is very similar. It links to the existing trails. It'll have the patios and gathering areas around it. The floor plan is similar. One thing that we did do, we expanded the hallway to make a little more of a lobby. So in the winter, if they're cross-country skiers, they could have a place where they could warm up a little bit. The restrooms are about the same as before. They've just been tweaked a little bit. We are bringing the utilities in with the water is linking to the existing water main at the hydrant. And the sewer goes to the manhole just south of here. The electrical will be coming off the transformer that's just east of this building. So we're hooking on to those existing utilities. The building is a similar structure. It'll have a sloped roof. And we'll be using a storage and mechanical equipment room on the upper part of the room. The costs are broken down here. The construction cost, the first part is going through the construction for the building and an allowance for the engineered fill. We're moving the building up the hill, so we're hoping to really eliminate any major issues with the engineered fill. We have added in here furnishings and equipment, which would be some tables and chairs for the community room as a 10% contingency. Going on to the project, we've left the budgets in for the shelter is the one we broke down there, and then the trails and plaza and design and engineering are the numbers that were in the grant application from before. The sources of funding, the total project is $1,050,000. The sources of funding with the grant is the same as it was. The local match is $175,000. There's $58,000 left in the budget that was established that wasn't used for the part of the grant that wasn't funded. It does show $222,000 of additional funding would be needed for this budget. If the original project and the grant, the total project would be less than what the grant was for the original one, if the whole project would have been funded. We do have a note under the items not included that we are hooking on to the existing utilities. At a later date, when the road is put in for Robbins Island, that would be the time it would make sense to do the new water service connection that Public Works would like. And the city engineer has given an estimate of $73,000 to $103,000 at that time. The contractors building this would not be typically utility contractors, but they'd be hooking on, so it'd be very easy to make these connections at a later date. Are there any questions?
Council, I'd look for a motion to approve approach E, and then have discussion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Councilmember Nelson.
So our motion is to approve Plan E, direct staff to prepare bids. And are you asking us to come up with funds tonight or to wait till the bids come in and have finance review it at that time?
Well, I think it's premature to approve a budget when the finance committee hasn't had the opportunity to review that budget. And so what I would prefer is to see the plans and specs developed and then come back with those, and then you can talk about it in your committee and then identify those funding sources to bring back at the next council meeting on the 20th.
I just was trying to clarify the motion.
So we continue with plans and specs, so we start getting some numbers, what I was thinking.
Okay.
Is that okay with your motion? Yep. So we'd be approving everything other than the funding source tonight. Additional discussion. Roll call.
No. Davis,
Aye.
Alvarado,
Aye.
Osmus,
Aye.
Plowman,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Baggerly,
Aye.
Meskey.
Aye.
7 ayes, 1 nay.
That motion passes. Thank you. We'll take a 5-minute recess.
Oh, what, 6 weeks? I don't know, yeah,
So let's reconvene if we can.
Well, I hope.
Okay, let's reconvene, please.
Get the SOS middle of the meeting. I'm gonna blame you. Yeah. So the mayor pounds the gavel in the woods. Does anybody hear it? Are we in the woods? Don't make me answer that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, we'll go ahead and reconvene the meeting. Next, we'll have the proclamation of National Public Works Week by Councilmember Plowman as our Chair of Public Works, Public Safety. Councilmember Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As the Chair of Public Works, Public Safety, I've been asked to read the statement on behalf of the mayor in recognition of National Public Works Week. This year's theme, It Starts Here, and National Public Works Week is May 19th through the 25th. And it reads, whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of the city of Willmar. And whereas these infrastructure, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public works professionals who are engineers, managers, and employees at all levels of government and the private sector who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment, and solid waste systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for the citizens, civic leaders, and children in the city of Willmar to gain knowledge of and to maintain a progressive interest and understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in their respective communities. And whereas the year 2019 marks the 59th annual National Public Works Week sponsored by the American Public Works Association, Canadian Public Works Association, be it now resolved, I, Mayor Calvin, do hereby designate the week May 19th through 25th as 2019 as National Public Works Week. Urge all citizens to join with representatives of the American Public Works Association and Canadian Public Works Association and government agencies in activities, events, and ceremonies designed to pay tribute to our public works professionals, engineers, managers, and employees, and to recognize the substantial contributions they make to protecting our national health, safety, and quality of life. In witness thereof, we have a hand and a seal to be affixed dated the 6th of May, 2019. Mayor Calvin.
Thank you very much for reading that, and thank you to our Public Works Department for all the work they do. Next, we have the Finance Committee report. Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. Finance Committee met on Thursday, April 18th at the City Office Building. Council members Nelson, Alvarado, Plowman, and Osmus were in attendance, along with Finance Director Steve Okens and Tribune reporter Shelby Linrud. After the meeting was called to order, we had no public comments. The first item that is there for, and it's two resolutions, is the Minnesota Main Street Mini Grant. And the committee reviewed the information about the Preservation Alliance of Minnesota's mini grant program. Willmar Main Street submitted an application for $6,000 and received the award of $4,200 to help fund the retail business design workshops. These workshops were a partnership between the University of Minnesota Extension, College of Design, Candy, Ohio, and Willmar EDC, Willmar Area Foundation, United Way, and several other area partners. This is the first program of this kind in Minnesota. There were two actions that we were requested to do, and one was to accept the grant funding of $4,200, and that motion was made and second, and I will enter that motion now to accept the grant from Minnesota Main Street in the amount of $4,200.
So moved.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Councilmember Schwantes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to thank City Planner Swedberg again for all the work and effort she put into those workshops. The feedback from participants was outstanding. So thank you very much.
Additional discussion. I will also just note that I was down at Spurs for the Cinco de Mayo event, and they were one of the participants, and they were very appreciative of the information that they were able to gain. And they've done some things in their building just with the materials that were presented. So again, job well done. Roll call.
Councilmember Davis.
Aye.
Alvarado.
Aye.
Osmus.
Aye.
Plowman.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Baggerly.
Aye.
Meskey.
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes. Councilmember Nelson.
The second item was to reduce the budget based off from that grant amount to be revised at $56,700. There was a motion and second made for that, and I would enter that motion now.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to reduce the budget for Main Street by the amount reduced by the grant. The amount of $56,700. Discussion. Roll call.
Councilmember Alvarado.
Aye.
Osmus.
Aye.
Plowman.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Baggerly,
Aye.
Meske,
Aye.
Schwantes.
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes. Councilmember Nelson.
The next items are for information only. The first one was the budget calendar for 2020. The finance director brought the budget forward and explained that the mayor, city administrator, and the finance director will be meeting to set the 2020 budget. The calendar that we received was actually the 2019 budget, and I believe it has been updated in our packet, but we will be reviewing that and bringing that back for adoption at the next meeting. The next item was to just receive information on the wastewater treatment rate study. And staff explained that Springstead Incorporated had completed their analysis of the wastewater utility rates for the city's sewage treatment plant. Based on the various assumptions, the financial projections indicate that no rate increases are needed in 2019 through 2021. The city can alternatively plan to refinance the ballooned maturities in 2025 through 2029 or increase rates 2.5% annually beginning in 2022 to maintain coverage levels and address the debt service increases that begin in 2025. So that is for information only. The next item, we did receive the first quarter 2019 finance and investment report, and this is for your information. Mr. Okins is not here this evening, and so he will be able to address any questions on that at the next meeting. We also discussed at our next meeting, we will start with the second quarter report in July. The next item was regarding the 2018 audit process. And Mr. Okins explained that the preliminary 2018 year-end excess for the general fund was approximately $870,000. He also explained how it actually takes 3 different levels of processing to finalize the numbers, those beginning with pre-audit, internal audit, and external independent audit. The committee will review this again at the time of the completion of the external audit. Due to the time constraints, we held the rest of the items for our next meeting, which is purchasing policy review, tax abatement, tax increase in increment financing discussion, deferred, suspense, and agricultural assessments. And we also reviewed our meeting schedule and set a tentative date for May 16th for our next meeting. There was no other business to come before the meeting, and we adjourned at 6:45, and I would make a motion to accept the minutes.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to accept the minutes of the Finance Committee. Discussion. Councilmember Nelson, I noticed that on the agenda, it states that you are going to again have the public meetings at the fire station to review the budget. I had asked the finance director to take that out. I'm assuming that you must have asked to put that back in.
I did not. That the information that he brought to us was actually the 2019 calendar. And he indicated that he had not met with you yet on that, so we'll be reviewing. When he sent it out, he said he'd gotten a response from Ike, but that he hadn't gotten a response from you. So we will be reviewing that agenda as at the next meeting. So it was only that he added dates to this year. So I have no idea about what your wishes are for meetings at this time.
Yeah, I had met with the finance director before the agenda went out, actually. Outside
This agenda?
right. That was outside of the administrator's office, actually, is where I met with him. So,
This
okay,
was-
I will talk with him about that.
Okay, this was what we were presented at the finance meeting on the 18th.
Okay, sounds good. There's been a motion made and seconded to file the minutes. Additional discussion. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. That motion does carry. Next, we have consideration of settlement and release agreement between the city and Bruce Peterson. Mr. Maskey.
As you know, we had gone into closed session to discuss a possible settlement with a former employee. We did negotiate that settlement. I'm happy to let you know. You did receive that via email. The contents of that does not become public until the settlement is signed by both parties. Be aware that I guess his name is on here, Bruce Peterson did sign that document today at 4 o'clock. However, the city administrator and mayor still need to sign that document before that becomes public because it contains sensitive information. There is a resolution before you. Again, the contents of that are sensitive but can be released once that document is signed. So I would introduce the resolution, and the part that I can say is not the whereases where there's sensitive information, but in the therefore be it resolved. I'd introduce the resolution to approve the settlement and release agreement between the city of Willmar and Bruce Peterson, and authorize the mayor and city administrator to sign and fully execute the settlement and release agreement between the city of Willmar and Bruce Peterson.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to enter into an agreement of settlement and release agreement between the city of Willmar and Mr. Bruce Peterson, our former planning and development director. Discussion. Roll call.
Councilmember Osmus,
Aye.
Plowman,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Baggerly,
Aye.
Meske,
Aye.
Schwantes,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Alvarado.
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nay.
The resolution passes. Next, we'll have the item that I have on the agenda is the replacement of the EDC Joint Powers Board member. A resignation was submitted to me by Councilmember Plowman due to family and work commitments. He is no longer able to serve on the EDC Joint Powers Board. And so I'm requesting the council to consider a replacement for that position. That decision I'm requesting the council to make at their next meeting. This was not made, you were not made aware of it. So if you wish to serve on that, you would not have had ample time to evaluate and vet that. And so I'm just making you aware of that as a council, that there is a council position or a city position made available on the Joint Powers EDC board. So I'm just making you aware of that. That's for information. At this time, I would like to ask if Councilmember Nelson has any comments that she would like to make in regards to just general comments for under council member announcements.
I do not.
Okay, thank you. At this time, Councilmember Nelson has asked to be excused, and she is excused from the meeting. It is not necessary for her to leave. It is her choice to leave. And she has followed all the requirements under the open meeting law, public disclosure law. And when this discussion item first came to the table, she made myself as the mayor aware of potential conflict. And so the comments being circulated in the community are not accurate. The ruling of our city attorney is very clear. And I respectfully allow you to be released from the meeting as an excused absence.
Thank you.
Next, we have consideration of the City Hall site options. Councilmember Schwantes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as a City Hall task force, we've tried to use a process that would help us make a good, solid decision for what would benefit the citizens of our community for years into the future. I want to thank the council for your time and consideration in mulling over the various sites and concepts. And I'd also like to offer a special thank you to the task force members for the hours that you've put into this project to date. Your commitment to this project has been greatly appreciated, and it's my hope that the council can make a decision tonight and that the task force can continue into the next phase of the City Hall project. There are a couple of elephants in the room that I'd like to address first so that we can then concentrate on the 3 site concepts that are being brought forward by the City Hall Task Force. And the first elephant is why the task force has been focused on downtown. In 2005, you probably remember when the Minnesota design team spent a great deal of time in Willmar meeting with residents of Willmar to create a plan for the downtown area. It was a very comprehensive study and many people participated in the meetings, and I would guess there are people in this room that assisted and participated, and you probably recall those events. Well, in 2012 then, under the direction of Mayor Yanish, the Minnesota Design Team report was updated. And again, there was a public meeting and various roundtable discussions that took place. That plan, the 2012 Willmar Downtown Plan, states art institutions, government agencies, and other non-business entities have a significant positive impact on downtown Willmar. They bring people downtown and also encourage complementary businesses to locate here. Keeping these uses downtown should be highly important to the city of Willmar and should be encouraged through policies, cooperation, and partnerships. Specifically, the following institutions should be encouraged to remain downtown. And that's a direct quote out of the plan. The number one building that it references or institution that should be retained downtown is the City Hall site, number one on their list. I'll also note that the Willmar Downtown Plan of 2012 highlighted the entrance from Highway 12 into downtown at Block 25 as a gateway into downtown. And that's an item that the task force has noted about Block 25 and was also noted Friday night. At the public meeting that took place last summer on June 26, 2018, people gathered at the fire station to consider 4 sites for the new City Hall building. The sites discussed at that time were the current City Hall, East Highway 12, Block 50, and the Candy Mall. Engen Associates gave a presentation highlighting the positive and the negative aspects of each site, and the public gave comments, and then participants were asked to vote for their preferred site. There were 173 votes that night. The votes per site are as follows. The current City Hall received 99 votes. East Highway 12 had 59 votes. Block 50 had 10 votes, and the Candy Mall had 5 votes, less than 3%. There were 173 votes taken. I'll note that the City Hall site actually had more votes than the other 3 sites combined. At the January 2019 council retreat, when City Hall was discussed again, the City Hall Task Force was created and we were tasked with finding the best location in downtown Willmar. We've been working on the site selection diligently since January, and the task force has been very intentional in determining its top priorities and have measured each site against those priorities as a way of remaining focused and objective. At the end of each meeting, we went around the table and asked task force members to share a word or a thought. And the parking lot conversation, you know how after the meeting's over and you go out to your car and you have a conversation in the parking lot? We wanted to bring that conversation into the meeting. And so instead of having that taking place outside, I asked people to either give us a word about how they were feeling about the event, or to have a statement that starts with, I like, I wish, or I wonder. And for those of you who were there, you know what I'm referring to here. This task force, this gave task force members the opportunity to reflect and bring forth ideas that hadn't yet been discussed. Any task force member, whether they're a city council member or staff, could have said, I wonder if we should be looking out of downtown. Or they could have said, I wish we could look at locations other than downtown. There was a comment asking if there was a site that we hadn't thought of yet, but no one questioned being in downtown Willmar during the task force meetings. At Friday night's public meeting, remaining downtown was second only to comments about Block 25 being a gateway into downtown. Locating in downtown is not a knee-jerk reaction. It has been in the forefront for 15 years. As for the second elephant in the room, last Wednesday, there was a press release by Rockstep and the owners of the mall offering to sell or lease 50,000 square feet, or 2/3 of the Herberger's location, for City Hall and a community center. The proposed purchase price for that property is $785,000. That sounds like a great price, given the estimated cost for City Hall is $4 million. And that would be the cost to either remodel or rebuild. But like other properties vetted by the task force, the purchase price is only a starting point. And we need to consider the other costs related to this offer. So what are they? We have the 50,000 square feet for this at $785,000. Also included in the offer, Rockstep is proposing that the city handle all snow removal on all portions of the mall. I don't have a cost estimate for the snow removal. I didn't ask staff to provide that. But there are very real costs associated with doing so. You've most likely seen the amount of equipment that's needed to clear the parking lot. It sits at the south end of the mall during the plowing season. It's reasonable to expect the city would need to buy additional equipment and hire additional employees. And then there's a question of what gets plowed first, the city streets or the mall parking lot. And there's another question as to whether the city should set a precedence to plow private businesses or not. I doubt our businesses that are engaged in the snowplow business want to see us do that. The offer also asked that we repave the parking lot to the west of the former Kmart store. Our staff has estimated the cost of repaving that portion of the parking lot at $600,000, and I feel pretty confident in our staff given the amount of pavement they've laid. So then, assuming that the city purchases a proposed portion of the mall, we would need to repave the lot to the north and east of Herberger's. I took a drive out there. If you haven't been through that parking lot for a while, you would agree that it needs to be addressed. And again, staff estimated that cost at $750,000. So that is $1,350,000 for paving the parking lots alone. The utilities need to be separated also as another item that was in the offer, and Rockstep has offered to cost share that with the city. Staff estimated that at only $5,000, so not a big item there. If the city agreed to acquire the property, Rockstep said that it would resolve the property tax dispute without having to go to court with a recommendation from their appraiser. My assumption is I think that means that they will cancel the lawsuit they have against the city over paying property taxes on the assessed value of the property. I know council members are aware of that. I'm not sure if the public was aware of that. And we're not done yet, of course. We still need to renovate the building. Staff has estimated the cost of renovation at $180 per square foot to $225 per square foot. And of course, that's 50,000 square feet. That equals $9 million at the $180 a square foot, and it goes to $13,390,000 at $225 per square foot. Now, mind you that we have been using $200 a square foot for the estimates. If we were really conservative and went with $150 a square foot, that's still $7,500,000 for renovation costs. So what does that all total up to? If we use the conservative figure of $150 per square foot, the total to acquire, renovate, and complete the parking lots is $9,640,000. That is the highest amount we have looked at to date. That exceeds the estimate for City Hall and the community center combined, of course, because we would have both of those located. The proposal was to have both of those located at the mall site. These figures don't include the cost of plowing the mall parking lot forevermore. One more thought regarding the Candy Mall's proposal to include both the City Hall and the community center is that there's been a lot of interest, to say the least, in the public regarding the City Hall location. I dare to say that the City Hall pales in comparison to the public's interest in the community center location. I personally don't believe that we should take away the voice of the community center committee before they've even had an opportunity to vet sites. Having said all that, again, I'm going to remind you that 1 year ago, community members voted to remain downtown, and only 5 votes out of the 173 votes were to relocate at the Candy Mall. So, set that all aside. Now I'd like to talk about what I had hoped to talk about, and that is refocusing on the 3 site concepts put forth by the City Hall Task Force. Each of these sites were evaluated again on the priorities that were identified by the council at its January retreat and then refined by the task force. The 3 site concepts are these. Site 1 is to remodel the current City Hall building. Site 2 is to demolish the current City Hall building and construct the new City Hall. And then site 3 is to consider the vacant land on block 25 for construction of a new city hall. We went through these benefits and limitations last time, so I will try and go through this quickly, but basically it's just a review of those. So at the renovating the current city hall building, again, the benefits are that there are no acquisition costs and no impact to the city tax rolls since we don't receive property taxes on our own property. There's a T1 site that's already on site, and it could be connected to the city auditorium, and again, located to downtown, in downtown. The limitations are that the cost of the renovation is comparable to a new building. Again, the facility study estimated it would cost 95% of the cost of a new building construction to do the remodeling. Relocation during the renovation is going to cost us about $50,000, plus the inconvenience of staff not being located together as they're farmed out at different sites, the inefficiencies that leads to, and the confusion that our residents are going to have as to which location do I go to get the services that I need. The building was originally designed for medical clinic, and the layout is not functional. It's not as functional for a city hall, and we'd be restricted to that current footprint. There's limited space for expansion. There's questions if there would be room for city council chambers. There's lower visibility at that location, less convenient traffic flow, and the parking is limited. Again, we're parking in the church parking lot, and if there's an event, a funeral, then where does staff park? So the second site option to demolish the current city building and construct a new hall is very similar. No acquisition costs, no impact to the city tax rolls. It's located downtown. T1 line is on site, and it can be connected to the auditorium. The limitations, again, are the cost of relocating at $50,000, a disruption for the employees, confusion for residents, the limited space for expansion, the lower visibility, less traffic, less convenient traffic flow, and the limited parking. So the third site option to consider then is acquiring the vacant land on block 25 and constructing the new city hall there. The benefits being that the city owns this parking lot, at least we own a parking lot on block 25. We don't own the whole block. We own the parking lot that is there right now. This is a larger site for construction, and we could build whatever footprint we desired, which would provide us the efficiencies that we're looking for and also provide us space for the city council chambers. Of course, it's located downtown and creating a very nice gateway into the downtown area. It has high visibility off of Highway 12. It's convenient and accessible traffic flow with a signal light there coming off of Highway 12. There is ample parking and an opportunity for green space, which is lacking downtown. And there's no displacement of the employees during the construction project, which could be 8 months or longer. The limitations of this site is the acquisition cost at $100,000. And again, this we felt was a reasonable cost considering the other acquisition costs we were comparing it to. It is on the city tax rolls for $2,178 a year. And the T1 line is not on that site, so we would need to install that, and I do not have a cost estimate on that. And obviously, because of the location, there's no connection to the city auditorium. At the council meeting last week, there were 2 additional items referenced in the discussion that I'd like to address. First, there was a concern about contamination at the Nelson property due to the nature of the business that was previously located on the property. And I think it's important to know that the MPCA completed their review and the site has passed the MPCA remediation. So that's good news, and I believe all the council members have a copy of that letter on file. Secondly, there was a question of the noise from the trains and the highway traffic. I personally wanted to check this out to see if there was merit to that. So Friday, I spent some time sitting in the county building on Benson Avenue. And I'll be honest with you, I was surprised it was quieter than I expected. And I would suggest that any one of you that question that item, go down there and just sit there for a few minutes yourselves. You will find it is not disruptive. I also asked the county administrator about the noise because I wanted to know if he had experienced any issues or any concerns from the county's point of view. So his response was that the train noise was a non-issue and it had not disrupted any work or any work conversations. He also noted the building was a bank before the county took it over. They ran a public bank there for years, and some of you might have done business there, and if you were in there at that time, most likely did not find that the noise was disruptive. I asked the county administrator if I could share his thoughts about this publicly, and obviously he must have said yes, or I wouldn't have been sharing it with you, right? And in that question, he responded by saying that he also thought that Block 25 would be a great location for possibly coordinating services or staff in the future. So something to think about if we locate at Block 25. Lastly, I'd note that there were about 50 people in attendance at Friday night's public meeting. We highlighted the benefits and the limitations of each of the site concepts, just as we have here tonight, and then opened it up for personal conversation and an opportunity to record people's thoughts on the 3x3 sticky notes. And I'd like to thank people who joined us. I know many of you who are persistent enough to be here yet tonight were at that meeting. Matter of fact, maybe all of you. So thank you for that. The comments were very much in line with those that were vetted by the City Hall Task Force. One of my favorite comments was a drawing on the board, and I don't know how many of you saw it, but it was a Nike swoosh with the words, "Just do it." And I can't agree with that more. It's time to make a decision and move forward with the new City Hall that this community can be proud of. And with that, I would like to again open it up to the task force members for any additional comments that you may have.
One of the comments I got today, they want to make sure that if we build something, build it big enough so that maybe we can combine different services. There's been talk of combining the community center with the city hall. I think we've heard that before. There's been, these are just comments that I've heard from the public, and we've probably all heard them. So I'm just going to share them. Some believe that we should vet the process, make the recommendation, vet it through the task force, and then make the recommendation, the final recommendation. What I'm hearing you say, Kathy, we got three choices. Pick one. That's what I'm understanding. I believe that the member of the community would want us to recommend one and bring it back to the council. So that's one thought I've heard. Those are a couple of things. I'm sure there's others, comments that others have heard.
Councilmember Schwantes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would note that at the last task force meeting, it was encouraged that the task force decide on one location and bring that to the council as a single recommendation. And the task force preferred to have it brought here with to the full council with this additional information. So that's why we are here looking at 3 sites tonight.
Councilman Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm in this process with a fairly open mind. My main thing was that I do remember the history going back, and that history noting that those participating in the discussions really did focus on continuing our city government to be located downtown, and that being kind of a focal point of the conversation. So that's sort of been my thing. But aside from that, I don't really have a dog in the race in terms of personal preference. So I kind of just took it upon myself the past couple weeks, because it's been in the media and it's been talked about, and there's people talking about it all over Facebook, and we've all been getting emails and we've been getting phone calls and all that. And I decided to go the opposite approach, and I decided to start asking everybody that I came across, not those who or reaching out to me, but instead ask everybody that I came across, what do you think about this? What do you think we should do? What would you like to see done? And I was a little bit surprised what I heard, and because I figured that they would be fairly opinionated. And the consensus of the majority of those that I asked, and specifically those in my ward, but people from all around the city, their response was, as long as it's going to be downtown, pick a location and get it done. And that was kind of their main, and they weren't very, and I asked them, okay, well, do you have what are your opinions in terms of location and in terms of this and in terms of that? And the resounding thing that I heard was, we understand that, that building that is currently used as City Hall is old. There's deferred maintenance costs. It can't, we're going to have to sink serious money into it in the future. So just make a decision, just choose what you're going to do and do it, but stop having that, it's not something that's got to be debated and shuffled back and forth. And I've asked a lot of people over and over every day that I come across somebody new to ask, and that's kind of the answer that I'm getting. So I just wanted to share that all with you because that's the honest feedback that I'm getting from those that haven't already decided to reach out to us. So that's my experience.
Councilmember Minsky.
Well, I just said that because that's basically where it is the choice was, we were looking at downtown sites. And if you're looking at downtown sites, it then becomes a question of, do you fix what we have or you build something new? And that's the choice to make. Because of building a new site, if you have a downtown restriction, there really is block 25 that's available to do that project as we're looking through it. To build new, empty spot. To renovate, there's other options that are out there. They all have different acquisition costs and so on. Repairing the existing city hall, for my bet, is the way to go on that because we can phase that up or take that down. I don't like option 2, but it's an option of tearing down the existing city hall and rebuilding. But again, it's a cost issue. So for me, I would be just like anyone that you asked. It's a decision if it's downtown restriction. Now there's been other sites coming up outside of downtown, but if downtown's the restriction, you want to build new, it's block 25. If you want to repair, in my opinion, it's right where we're at.
Councilmember Alvarado.
Just a clarification, Councilmember Muskie. You said if we repaired a building, it would be the current building.
Correct.
Okay. I just wanted to.
Because demoing the current building and paying the demolition cost and then rebuilding it, when you can rebuild what's there, it seems like an extra cost that we didn't have to do when we were looking at those costs. Doing up to a $220,000 demolition of a building when you can acquire the property for $100,000, that's blank. It's one of those things. It's a choice. You have to choose. Do you want to build a new site with a $4 million plus acquisition cost piece? Or do you want to repair what we have, is my opinion, if downtown is the restriction.
That's where the confusion comes in for me is is there more to the story? Are you saying there's more to the story? If we're staying downtown.
I'm a task force member. I was asked to give you a recommendation, and what we were tasked with, we had a downtown restriction.
Right.
And so I think we've done our due diligence of locating the sites, and that's why we didn't bring one option to you, because there is that option of, do you want to build a new site or do you want to repair what we have? And with a downtown restriction, that's where I would fall on it.
Right. Okay.
I served on the task force as well. And one of the things that I think we need to remember is that we were given a set of parameters by the council to consider at the retreat. And we whittled that down to approximately 10 different matrices that were important to us as a task force. And we were empowered to do that by this council. And so what we have done is, with those parameters that you set for us, we are coming with this recommendation. If you change the inputs, I think that's kind of a little bit what Councilmember Maskey and Councilmember Alvarado are referencing. If you change the inputs, then you may change the outcomes. But the inputs that we were asked to determine and the tools that we were given and the matrix we were given were to have it downtown. And then we had these other whittled down to 10 items to use as the evaluation tool. And that's what we did. And I have not had anybody talk to me about the process that was used. As a matter of fact, everybody that's talked to me said, we love the process you've used. Similar to Councilmember Plowman, I was at McMillan's this morning for breakfast, and I took it upon myself to ask a few people at McMillan's. And what I heard loud and clear was make a decision and move on. You were elected to make a decision. We are empowering you to make that decision. We expect you to make that decision, so make the decision. Councilmember Schwantes has, in her report, said, you have 3 concepts to look at, or you can request additional information, or you can ask us to look at a different site. It doesn't say that, it said that last week. But, I mean, you could do that. But you're here to make a decision, you're here to lead. And let me use an example of the wastewater treatment plant. The council had in front of it an opportunity to save $25 million to keep the wastewater treatment plant closer to Willmar. And the council at that time said, no, we're going to spend the money because we don't want that problem in Willmar. We have an opportunity tonight to provide leadership, to provide vision, and to set a course and leave a legacy for this community. And tonight we have that opportunity to take the next step. I encourage you as council members to take that step.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the resolution that was provided referencing Block 25. There are a number of whereas and such in this motion. And I would ask, with your approval, that we have our attorney, Robert Scott, walk us through this resolution.
Is there a second to the?
Second.
There's been a motion made and seconded to approve a resolution that is in front of you and have our city attorney walk through the resolution. City Attorney Scott.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. To be clear, I don't know if this resolution has been provided to every council member, so I want to take some time to walk through it.
Thank you.
I was only able to finalize it today because I was out at the end of the week last week. And to be clear, I prepared this resolution just so that it was ready in the event the council was ready to make a decision to move forward with selecting the City Hall site. And in the event that the city selected Block 25. And the reason I prepared a resolution is to summarize what we discussed last week at the council meeting. There is an issue with Block 25. The reason Councilmember Nelson has abstained from participating in the discussion tonight, as she did last week, as she did in the task force's process, is that her family does have, and she, as a council member, has a potential personal financial interest in that location. So for the city to proceed, it needs to make sure that it's complying with all the legal requirements that come into play because of that. We talked about the city charter. The city charter simply requires that Councilmember Nelson not participate in this decision, and she has complied with that procedure. We also talked about a statute. So what I want to do is just walk through what this resolution does. It has 2 main operative sections. The first section is the city council making findings and conclusions dealing with Councilmember Nelson's interest to make clear that it is aware of the governing law and has complied with the legal requirements. And then the second section is the operative authorizations and directives given to staff. So the recitals to the resolution, as Councilmember Schwantes referenced, simply summarize the process to date, the formation of the task force process, in identifying sites, the task force's commitment to receiving public opinions. They reference the applicable legal authority, the sections in the city charter that allow the city to acquire property for a project like this, as well as the state statute that does so. It references section 9.02 of the city's charter, which again says that a council member with a financial interest in a contract cannot participate in the making of that contract. They reference Minnesota statute section 471.87, which generally prohibits a public officer who is authorized to take part in any manner in making any contract in their official capacity from voluntarily having a personal financial interest in that contract or personally benefiting financially therefrom. With those recitals in place, the resolution would make the following findings. So this is the city council making the following findings. We don't usually want to just read, but I do want to read a couple of these. The first finding is that the estate of Norma Nelson, Councilmember Nelson's mother-in-law, owns a portion of Block 25, references the 3 parcels that the estate owns. And it states that Norma Nelson's will is the subject of a probate action currently pending in Candiota County District Court. The second finding is that the estate properties are encumbered assets of the estate, which means that certain obligations secured by liens on the estate properties must be satisfied before revenues from their sale could be used to make any distributions to beneficiaries named in the will. And I should state that I was provided a copy of the will. I did review it in order to prepare this resolution. It also states that Councilmember Nelson's spouse, Paul Nelson, Norman Nelson's son, is one of 5 residuary beneficiaries under the will, and would be entitled to a distribution of a percentage of anything remaining in the estate, including any revenues generated by the estate properties, after these obligations are satisfied. So if there's anything left in the estate, essentially after certain other property is disposed according to the will, a distribution could be made to Councilmember Nelson's spouse. The fourth finding is that it is currently unclear whether revenues from the sale of the estate properties and any other estate assets will be sufficient to satisfy all of the estate's obligations so that distributions could be made to beneficiaries. We just don't know that. I learned that as well from a conversation with Councilmember Nelson's attorney. My understanding is that these issues aren't going to be resolved for at least several months, and that's what the finding states. So given those findings, the resolution would conclude, the council would conclude that Councilmember Nelson has a potential indirect financial interest in the 3 estate properties on Block 25, but that such interest is not a voluntary interest. And that's a reference to the requirements of the state statute. It finds that it's not voluntary because neither Councilmember Nelson nor her spouse would be participating in making the decisions on behalf of the estate whether to sell the estate properties, and if so, at what price. That would be made by the estate's personal representative, not Councilmember Nelson or her spouse. And the second reason that the interest is involuntary is that Councilmember Nelson is not in a position to even disclaim that interest because she is not actually the named beneficiary in the will. Her husband is. It also makes a finding that Councilmember Nelson, under Charter Section 9.02, as we've discussed, is not authorized to vote or otherwise participate in any action the council might take in furtherance of entering a contract to acquire the estate properties. It documents and affirms that to date, Councilmember Nelson has satisfied the requirements of Charter Section 9.02 by abstaining from all consideration of City Hall site selection while Block 25 was under consideration. It documents that the task force and the council itself independently arrived at the decision that Block 25 is the preferred location for a new city hall. It concludes that the statute that we've talked about that's at issue, section 471.87, does not prohibit the city from entering into a contract to purchase the estate properties because of the fact, as we've discussed, that Councilmember Nelson's potential indirect interest in those properties is not voluntary. Finally, it states that the acquisition of Block 25 is necessary and in the public interest in order to construct the new city hall on that site. That's the findings section in the resolution. The actual directives and authorizations to staff are 3. The first is broadly authorizing staff and city's agents to begin negotiations with the owners of all non-city owned parcels on Block 25 for the city's purchase of those parcels, and to take any additional actions that are necessary or convenient in furtherance of that objective, including, if needed, commissioning appraisals, performing other investigations of site conditions or encumbrances on title. It also authorizes that if negotiations are unsuccessful, the city staff can begin making preparations as necessary to bring an eminent domain action. It does not authorize the city to file an eminent domain action. That authorization would have to come in a separate council action. It simply authorizes staff to begin work to bring this forward to the council if necessary in the future. And it's clear that any agreement to purchase any non-city owned parcels on Block 25 would have to come back to the city council for approval. As required by Charter Section 4.02, this resolution would request the Planning Commission to review and approve the city's acquisition of non-city owned parcels on Block 25. And finally, it would authorize and direct staff to solicit proposals for professional design and construction management services for the new city hall project, obviously subject to final approval by the council of any professional services agreements for that project. With that said, that's everything this resolution does. Certainly, I would be happy to answer any questions if necessary. And again, just to be clear, this resolution was prepared in the event the council itself, as a policy decision, determines that Block 25 is the preferred location for a new city hall.
Okay, so we have a motion that has been made and seconded to look at Block 25, the portion that is owned, the 3 lots that are owned as is disclosed in the resolution. So that's what your motion is for those 3 lots? Or does it include the Walrus property as well?
No, the Nelson properties.
Okay. Is that your understanding as well?
Yes.
Additional discussion. Councilmember Fagerly.
So if the property to the east doesn't want to sell, even though it is listed for sale, you're going to build a city hall next to a Quonset building?
I believe the motion is to look at this piece of property. I think that's what the motion is. I know that there's been conversations on the Walrus property. My understanding it is for sale. My assumption is, I guess I shouldn't assume, is that the intent of the motion or in the seconder? Councilmember Schwantes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think long-term, it would be our intent to acquire that property. However, when you look at the current purchase price on that parcel, compared to the Nelson property, what they're asking and the amount of land that's included in it. And then knowing that the Nelson property has already been remediated makes it more attractive. And I think we would be getting ahead of ourselves. I would feel more comfortable knowing more details about the Wodash property. And I'd prefer not to include it in this motion at this time, but I would expect that it would be a goal to acquire it if and when that property was available for a reasonable price, including any environmental issues.
Well, if I was the owner of that property, I would take it off the market now and wait for the city to say they want it. And then you can pay them relocation costs and other money. And I don't know what the soil is like on that property, but I don't know. I think we're making a big mistake myself. And I can't figure out, we all went and looked at the Hardware Hank building because we wanted to keep it downtown and everyone was pretty excited. The only reason we're not buying it is because we're taking it off the tax rolls. I don't know. It's a pretty good building, pretty sturdy, poured concrete tip-ups. I don't know. We're making a mistake I believe.
Just some discussion. Councilman Maskey.
I had a child in prom, so I had to leave at the end of that meeting. When that meeting was finished, was there discussion about all of the sticky notes, and did we tabulate the responses that were on those notes?
I did not.
Councilmember Schwantes.
We reviewed the notes for those of us that were remaining there. We clumped the themes together. I have them with me tonight if you'd like to see them. But really, I don't know that there was anything that was outside the norm of what the task force had already agreed to. The two items that received the most comments were the gateway, Block 25 being a gateway to downtown and remaining in downtown. There were, I don't know, probably, didn't count the number of stickies that were there, but
when we had the meeting with the fire hall, things quickly rose. One of the things that I keep looking back at that sticks with me is this council, in addition to when they went for City Hall, they wanted high consideration to be given on consolidation of multiple facilities, which was nice when we looked at the fire hall because we could combine a couple of facilities and we're holding true to what we're talking about here. We take that away because there were safety issues and other parking concerns, and they were very clearly articulated. I guess I'm asking for those that were there, because again, I left before all the tabulation. Were there any red flags? Because I heard plenty of talk about eventual traffic concerns, but I didn't hear safety concerns. I didn't expect to hear them for that location, but was there anything that rose up? I know we keep wanting to talk about the positives of the location. If we could, were there any negatives to that location that we saw across the data?
Councilmember Davis.
I think someone did write the Wodash property, didn't they? And that's a concern I have too. I think we would need to buy that and clear that spot, in my mind.
I think, as I recall.
Councilmember Alvarado.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There wasn't anything that rose like with the turnout of that parking lot at the fire hall. There wasn't anything that jumped out like that. Councilmember Schwantes addressed the noise issue. That was concerned. But as far as something that just stood out or was signaled out or was a big concern, I don't recall that off the top of my head. But the thing that I got a call today If we have to build it bigger so we can have more, like I said, others, combine things together to make it worthwhile, we should do that. There's always, and then there's always that, there was a concern about the shoehorn, putting it there, but, I don't know that I recall, like shutting down Highway or Second Street or any of that stuff. Yeah, no, honestly.
Councilmember Davis, if you would want to introduce, or Councilmember Fagerly, introduce a friendly amendment, you could make an amendment to the motion to include the Wodash property if that was your, that's, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I'm just saying if you wanted to do that, that would be an acceptable amendment to the motion. I think if you were going to do that, you would certainly want to make sure that you received a similar letter of clear contamination from the MPCA as part of that, but that would be up to the motioner to make whatever findings of fact they felt appropriate. So if you want to do that, you certainly could do that as an amendment to see if the amendment passed. I mean, that is an option that you could do if that's a concern that you have. I mean, we have been given a number that property is for sale for $100,000 as well. I believe is the number, right, Mr. Holland?
That's right.
Councilmember Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess that's the remaining concern that I have is, you know, it doesn't seem like wise practice to initiate the negotiation of a piece of property and then also have out there public, you know, for public knowledge that we're very interested in the piece of property right next to it. That's almost like signing a blank check. It would, I don't know exactly how to navigate it because I'm not, I mean, I would have to give it just a little bit of thought, but I feel like there is a way that it could be amended so that we could go through an exploratory process regarding that piece of property rather than that piece of property be something that we end up needing. Because if that piece of property is something that we end up needing, then that's not good for us. It's not good to go down a road putting ourselves in that position. So if there's any way that we can maybe navigate the negotiation so that that would not necessarily be the case. Maybe have the negotiation regarding both pieces of property at the same time. So one is contingent upon the other.
You could certainly ask your city attorney for some guidance if you wanted to do that. Councilmember Osmus.
For right now, where we're at, we know what is the soil conditions of the Nelson property. That's what we need, that space to build what we need to build a city hall. I don't think we can go into yet what's going on with the Wodash property. We don't need it now. We could put up a fence if we wanted to. But I think Councilmember Schwantes laid it out pretty good with saying that either the cost has to go down, the soil conditions have to be met. Right now, we don't need that property. So we need to make a decision of what we can build the city hall on now. We have ample parking with the space that there is with the Nelson property. And that's my issue with the other, and I've stated it before, with the city hall where it's at, there's not parking, and it would open up that parking for the auditorium.
City Administrator Holland.
You know, a couple of weeks ago, I mentioned that we didn't know what was on that Wodash property. I will also say we don't know what's under our own parking lot. That hasn't been mentioned tonight. One of the things that when you go to do a project like this is you have to vet that whole property, that whole parcel, everything to make sure there's not an Indian burial ground to oil underneath that soil. And I've encountered both of those in my lifetime. And so what I'm suggesting tonight is that the council can vote with the approval to move forward to have staff do the vetting on this property. And we can vet all that entire block. And then the staff can come back with, okay, we've vetted now the entire property. We've had boring samples taken. It's going to take a while, but it'll be worth it, because then you're going to know absolutely sure, because you can't just build on any soil. A lot of people think, well, I'm just building a house. Well, that's not the case when you're building these heavy buildings like this. And so you have to do your due diligence. So my recommendation is that you move forward, giving staff the direction to vet these properties, to do the soil sampling on all of it, the entire block. And then we can also negotiate the listing prices. Is it a blank check? It's not a blank check, because he's listed it at $100,000. So if he came back and said, I want $200,000, I don't think that's likely. But that's a starting point. It's on both properties. Those are starting point prices. So we can negotiate that. So that's my recommendation, is that if you are interested in Block 25, let us do the vetting on the entire property, including our own property, because we don't know the history underneath that parking lot. At least I don't know it, and I don't know of anybody that does know that. So I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
The motion on the table is to do the Nelson property. It doesn't include the Old Ash property at this point. Additional conversation. Councilman Maskey.
Can we do borings on that property that we don't own?
Pardon? Can we do borings on property we don't own?
On all that whole block? Yeah.
Sure. All we have to do is ask.
Okay. A comment. I've heard many people that are in favor of building the new building, that they wanted this building to be this iconic. It's the city's living room. I don't like the idea of putting it next to a fence because there's an unsightly property next to it. I'm sorry, it just doesn't make sense to me.
Forget I said it.
And so I guess if I like the idea, I like what you're talking about, the city administrator. I think that makes sense. It's a slow down and take a really look at this thing. If you're serious about the property, let's take a look at it, because I mean, that's what I'm hearing is the opposition so far to this property has been the idea of having to build a fence. That seems odd to me.
I just.
Councilmember Alvarado.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I just recalled another thing that was brought up is what's it going to be like next to Quick Trip? And I don't know. Who knows? But that was an issue too. We're going to have our iconic building next to, and they're pretty buildings and they're well kept and well maintained, and I think those that's going to be a boon to our town to have that down there. I'm excited about having that downtown. The convenience store there, but that was another issue that was brought up.
I'm looking to make sure no one wants to make a friendly amendment. Councilmember Osmus.
In the discussion, I would just like to get away from iconic. I think it's going to be a nice building. I think everybody would expect, if we're going to put 4 million of the taxpayers' money into it, it looks decent. But I don't know that it's going to be a showpiece or iconic. It's going to be a nice building. I would expect that if we're with the taxpayers' money, if we're being responsible. But I do think that it's going to be a part of an area that is getting built up and is going to look very nice coming in on Highway 12. You're going to have Quick Trip, like you said. It's going to be a nice building. You've got Heritage Bank that's remodeling and doing beautiful stuff on the outside of their building. It's going to fit in. I mean, it's going to be a good area to build.
Councilmember Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to motion for a friendly amendment, doing everything that the original motion included, also including the directing staff to further explore the Wodash property at the same time. And that may involve taking soil samples or requesting the ability to take soil samples and/or negotiation of purchase price.
A second.
Motion's been made and seconded to, I believe that's a substantial change to the motion, so that is going to have to be acted on separately, correct?
That's, I think, a standard amendment to the motion. I think you could do a vote on that amendment, yes.
But I mean, I can't just do it as a friendly amendment because it can't be added. It has to be a separate motion vote.
Yeah, I would vote separately on it.
Correct, okay. So there's a motion on the table to include the Wodash property to have staff do their due diligence. I'll summarize it with that. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Additional discussion on the amendment. Roll, Councilmember Meske.
The due diligence included the soil borings, correct? Not just the
Correct.
negotiated price.
Right.
Right. Property negotiations along with property investigation discussion.
Including, which would include our own.
Additional discussion to the amendment. Roll call.
Councilmember Plowman,
Aye.
Baggerly,
No.
Meske.
Aye.
Schwantes,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Alvarado,
Aye.
Osmus,
Aye.
6 ayes, 1 nay.
That motion that motion passes. Now on to the original resolution that's in front of you. And one of the things I wanted to point out is that the resolution does give the option for appraisals of said property. Is it the desire of staff to do the appraisals? The city administrator and I talked about that earlier today as to whether or not appraisals would be necessary. I think it would be in the best interest of the city to do the appraisals as is stated in the resolution. Unless somebody has a disagreement to that.
I do. We aren't getting a loan on it. We're gonna be bonding for the whole building. People are either gonna sell it for what they want or they aren't going to.
Okay, that's fair.
I mean, it's no use spending $2,500, $5,000 for a commercial appraisal.
Well, you're a lot more professional about that than I am. I have no knowledge about that, so that's good advice. Additional discussion. All in favor of the resolution as proposed, roll call.
Councilmember Fagerly,
No.
Meske,
Aye.
Schwantes,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Alvarado,
Aye.
Osmus,
Aye.
Plowman,
Aye.
6 ayes, 1 nay.
The resolution passes as well. Staff, you have your work cut out for you. Council, thank you for walking through this process. I know it was a painful process, but you did a very nice job. Next, we have city administrator comments.
I just want to comment that if you're bored in Willmar, then you don't need to be, because coming up the 17th, we've got the mayor's bike ride, the downtown eating event, and festivities that evening. On that Saturday, the Lions Club will be hosting the Dog Days again. I participated that last year. It's a great event. Also on the 23rd, during Public Works Week, come out to the Public Works building. We're going to have the rodeo up again. And if you want to get in the cherry picker and go up 3 stories high, you can do that. I won't do that. And then lastly, the YMCA is hosting a 5K at Memorial Day weekend on the 25th. So come out and I'll hand you a bottle of water. I'm not running this year. So knee injury, I'm sure. Thank you, Mayor.
I thought it was trouble with your eye. You couldn't see doing it. Anyway, under mayor's comments, I did forward to the council notification from Deed that we received last week, that we received the $750,000 grant that we'd applied for Deed for the downtown improvements. That's very good information. That's very good for us. And again, that will do a lot of things with our streetscape. We'll do a lot of things with our lights for our downtown and covering the city's portion of that. I want to commend staff who worked on that. I know Mr. Holland put in a fair amount of work on that, along with other staff members. And I also want to thank the Kennewick County City Willmar HRA, because of the work that they did in putting those grants together. Last year, we received the highest grant amount of any city for a deed project that we had. And that was very encouraging. And we didn't think we had a real good chance of getting the entire amount, but we were successful in that deed grant application. So that's very good news for our city. There's a lot of good things happening within our community, and we need to take pride in what we're doing as well. So I just wanted to mention that. Then I also just want to reemphasize on May 16th, 13 ways to kill your community. And just to make sure that council members get signed up, I'm signed up to attend the meeting on the 16th at noon because I have the regional mayors meeting in Edina that afternoon, and then on the 17th. And I'll rush back on the 17th to attend Ridgewater graduation, followed by the mayor's bike ride. So again, there's a lot of great things happening within the community. My wife came home and gave me surprising news today. So I don't know if any of you were listening to the news today, but on KWLM, the mayor was served with a lawsuit. And so it's always good when you hear this from the news and you don't hear it from staff or you don't hear it from the city attorney. But allegedly, I've been served with a lawsuit. And so we'll have to have our city attorney look into that. It was filed with the courts, I guess. My wife came in the door. She came flying in the door and she said, "Marv, what's going on? You've been sued." So I know nothing about it. So I guess I've got 2 lawsuits against me. So we probably have to call JP to find out what's going on. So so for those of you that heard that on the radio, you heard it before I did. So, and that's all the mayor has for good news. So Councilmember Fagerly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Community development, on Monday, we're going to be talking about the flood insurance program because I've been receiving calls, and our community development director said he's an expert on it, so he's going to be talking to us about it.
Sounds good.
All right, thanks.
Councilmember Maskey.
Pass.
Councilmember Schwantes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to say thank you to the council for making a decision tonight. I really appreciate it, and I want to thank the task force for all the work and effort that you have put into it. And I'm excited for this next phase of it, and we'll see where it takes us. So I also want to make you aware that the stormwater subcommittee for the local option sales tax met, and at our last meeting, we agreed that we would do a tour of Willmar and talk about the watershed and different points of interest regarding stormwater so that we all have a good understanding of stormwater, right? Before we really get deep into things. So I want to extend an invitation to you as fellow council members, if you would like to participate in this tour with us, so that we're all up to speed on things to know about stormwater, you're welcome to join us. So the date is Tuesday, May 28th. We'll begin at 8 o'clock. It goes from 8 until 10 o'clock. We'll be meeting at the Goodness because folks wanted a good cup of coffee before we leave. So I would need to have that noticed as a public meeting as well, assuming that there would be other council members joining us. So hope you do.
Councilmember Davis.
I will be attending if I can find someone to work, and that's all I have to say.
Councilmember Alvarado.
I don't have too much to say. I really appreciate tonight. I think it was a lot of hard work and we got a lot of stuff done. So hats off to Kathy for her super job. Thank you.
Councilman Rasmus.
I just want to comment on a couple of past events that happened this last week. The mayor's prayer breakfast was a huge success. We were setting up tables at the end because there was an overflow crowd. I want to thank the mayor and his committee for putting together a wonderful, wonderful breakfast and a great speaker. It was a good event. And then also on Sunday, I took my family, my grandkids, out to the community center for the Cinco de Mayo celebration. And it was good food, and we played some Mexican bingo. And it was, and again, hugely popular. And there was, again, they were setting up tables because it was an overcrowded. And it was fun. And to thank all those people that put that together. Good events in Willmar.
Councilman Plowman.
I will pass tonight. Thank you.
Anything else for the good of the order?
Just one question for Councilman Swanta. You taking a van or a bus or
A bus.
transit
I
bus?
assume it'd be
or-
like a cat bus. Does that make sense?
I believe
Cat bus?
that he said it was going to be a cat bus, right?
That's the plan right now. We're still making those arrangements.
CCT. Yeah.
Still cat to us.
Yeah, it's still
Thank you.
cat to us
Sorry.
old people. Anything else for the good of the order? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. We are adjourned.